It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. Lisa Schmeiser is here from No Jitter. Daniel Rubino from Windows Central. Attorney Kathy Gellis. We just learned the United Kingdom is asking Apple for a backdoor into its end-to-end encryption. What will Apple do? We're going to talk about the CISA bill, which is a plan by Congress to ban social media for all people under 13. And we'll talk a little bit about what Doge is doing and whether it's legal. That and a whole lot more coming up next on Twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 1018, recorded Sunday, February 9th, 2025. Self-driving government. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. Doing it a little early this week. Apologies to people who like to watch the stream live. I hope you got the message. The memo arrived because there's apparently a football game on later in the day. Lisa Schmeiser, are you all excited about the big Super Bowl?
I like it better when the 49ers play. And the reason I like it better is because the roads empty out and I can go anywhere in the Bay Area without traffic.
It's true. This one is going to be so low rated, I think, because it's a replay of 2 years ago that I think your hike is off. Editor-in-Chief at No Jitter, it's great to see you. And I see more and more people using the Blue Sky handle nowadays. L. Schmeiser at the Blue Sky. Also here, Daniel Rubino. He's Editor-in-Chief of Windows Central. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
Good to see you. God, your hair looks good. Have you been, what's your conditioning routine like? I don't know.
It is a complicated.
Is it?
Well, you gotta have a regime, right?
I just found out you can get a shampoo in a bar like soap.
Oh.
And it saves plastic. I know.
I still live with guys. They make shampoo, conditioner, and body wash.
5-in-1, baby.
Might as well just add toothpaste.
Irish Spring 5-in-1. It cleans everything, including grout. Good to see you, Daniel. Thank you for being here. Also, our attorney at large, IP attorney, a contributor to Tech Dirt. You probably been reading her somewhat upset. What's the word?
Critical.
Posts on Tech Dirt. Critical. CGCouncil.com. Great to see you, Kathy Gellis.
Yes,
always
although now I realize CGCOUNSEL.
Oh, we left out a C.
In the letter. Yeah.
C. She's not a counselor. She's not. She's a counselor. That's right.
I also recommend never get a domain name that is like, I forget if it's homonym or homophone, but it was a bad idea. So.
Yeah. Well, if you get CGCOUNSEL, you have to get all the other spellings, COUNSCIL and all of that.
MOUSC. Oh, no.
That too. Big story today. There are a lot of big stories today, actually. We've got a jammed show, so we're going to jam along. UK has ordered Apple to give it access to encrypted cloud data. This is from the Financial Times. The British government has ordered Apple to grant it secret access. That's the interesting part. How do we know this? I think there was a leaker. To its customers' encrypted cloud storage. This is from the Snoopers Charter, which was a bill passed the UK Investigatory Powers Act. Last month, Apple received a, quote, technical capability notice requiring them to create a backdoor to iCloud. Now, this was not, the government has not said this. Apple has not said this. They're not allowed to. It's one of those. According to people familiar with the matter, the move would enable UK, I started saying UK, but it isn't just UK. The move would enable global law enforcement and security services. Everybody would be affected. It's extraterritorial, which means UK law enforcement could access the encrypted data of Apple customers anywhere in the world, including in the United States. You know what? This has been going on for years. The FBI has been asking Apple to do it. Apple said no. FBI hasn't forced them to do it. Australia's tried this, but this is the first time a nation state has actually, as far as I know, told Apple explicitly, we need a back door.
I feel like it had happened before a number of years ago, and I thought that it was kind of put to rest back then. So I was surprised to see this news where it just kind of came to the fore of like, oh yeah, we're revisiting this issue and ignoring every reason anyone ever told us for why it was a terrible idea.
So
wasn't there a big deal about this with the San Bernardino shooter?
Yeah, and Apple said no to the FBI.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I was going to say, I think they used to have kind of holes in their operating system where third-party software was able to access this stuff. And then Apple patched all that and so
Apple
difficult.
Apple has in the past been able to do this. In fact, they told the FBI in the case of the San Bernardino terrorists that, if you had just taken his phone home, it would have uploaded the contents to iCloud and we could have given it to you. So as recently as whenever that was, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, Apple would and did do that. They've done it in other situations as well. Trump's campaign chief was using WhatsApp, which was encrypted to message. This is in the 2016 election. But WhatsApp uploaded unencrypted text to the Apple iCloud, and the government got it. We know that happened because if you read the indictment, they quoted his WhatsApp messages from iCloud. But Apple patched that hole. They fully encrypted. As far as we know, they fully encrypted everything. In order for iCloud to work, they have to have a key because, for a variety of reasons. If you have fully encrypted cloud storage, there's a lot of abilities that go away, which is why most cloud storage companies, including, I think, Microsoft, offer, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, kind of an enclave, an encrypted enclave, and then the rest of it, we have the keys to it. Isn't that right?
Yeah, they're called vaults. Yeah.
Vaults.
Yeah, they're secure. Yeah.
Apple does not offer that. Apple just says we have the keys, but we're not going to give them to anyone. This is a huge issue, as we know, from backdoors in the past. In fact, it's not been so long ago that it was revealed that Salt Typhoon, Chinese hackers, had access to the phones of many officials in government, high officials in government, because going way back to the 90s, the government mandated that there would be wiretap capability in digital technologies. At the time, the FBI director said, no, but don't worry because this backdoor will never leak out. Well, it did. And as a result, we've got Chinese hackers in our phone network and can't do much about it, incidentally. So this is always a bad idea. I think every real security guru says there's no way backdoors stay secret.
Pour one out for all the security gurus this week. They're having a bad week.
It's a bad week for security in general. Yeah. Go ahead, Daniel.
Sorry, I was going to say that, what's also scary about this is the fact that, and you mentioned this earlier, that, if they do this, then they can access data from Americans indirectly, right?
Yes.
And this is what the NSA has always done. NSA can't spy, and with the Patriot Act, can't spy directly on Americans. But if they're spying on someone else in another country who happens to have access to Americans, that data gets collected as well. And so it's an indirect way. So I wouldn't even be surprised if the U.S. government is shrugging their shoulders, we're not saying you guys shouldn't do this, because it would probably help them as well.
They want it.
They're part of the whole Five Eyes,
A consultant advising the United States on encryption matters, according to the Washington Post, who broke this story, said Apple would be barred from warning its users if this happens. Apple, had rolled out, and this is what started this a couple of years ago, advanced data protection. A switch you could turn on. Most people don't, because it eliminates some of, as I said, if some of the features of iCloud and other things. But they offered it, and they specifically encouraged government officials to use it because they didn't even have the keys to this. This was fully encrypted. It had tried to do this a couple of years earlier, backed off after, according to the Post, after objections from the SBI. This was back in the first term of President Trump. The service is an available security option for Apple users in the U.S. and elsewhere. I'm not sure if it's available in the U.K. Probably what will happen is Apple will make it no longer available in the U.K. But that doesn't solve the problem in the U.S. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, a Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, said the U.S. has to dissuade Britain. Trump and American tech companies letting foreign governments secretly spy on Americans would be unconscionable, an unmitigated disaster for America. I know why you're laughing.
Sorry.
I know why you're laughing. And I bet Ron Wyden knew what he was saying. Unmitigated disaster for Americans' privacy and our national security. Signal President Meredith Whittaker said using technical capability notices to weaken encryption around the globe is a shocking move that will position the UK as a tech pariah rather than a tech leader. If implemented, the directive will create a dangerous cybersecurity vulnerability in the nervous system of our global economy. And you know why Meredith Whittaker is commenting on this, because next it's Signal. Because Signal, there's no backdoor in Signal. The UK's obviously.
I like Meredith. Yeah,
she's fantastic.
She writes a lot of great stuff on this topic. Yeah.
This, given all the news coming out of DC, this will probably not get the coverage it should. But if you're watching our shows, you understand why this is such a big deal.
Well, I think it's up for Apple to somehow figure out how to resist on its own. We don't have a foreign policy at the moment. We barely have a domestic policy at the moment. So there's the conventional wisdom about how we would approach this is not available to us. This is not something where you get together, you speak to your government, and you sort of point out like, okay, I know you're tempted, but here's the consequences of if this happens. This is not a government that is equipped to consider the consequences of decisions that it makes. And at this point, given how much power is embodied in any particular administration and getting exercised in any particular way, it's probably all for incursions for privacy schmivacy. It seems to be the administration's position in an awful lot of technology areas these days.
Android is also at this point end-to-end encrypted in its backups. It does not offer, it does not have the keys. So remember that this came out because of a leak. It's very likely that the same order went to Google and went to Signal and went to Meta for WhatsApp. Because, why would they just target Apple? Google's been encrypting backups for Android phones since 2018. Google declined. This is interesting. Google declined to say whether any government had sought a backdoor.
Google has turned into such a weird company, right? They were the good guys for so long. And then of course they had that, we don't do evil thing, and they got rid of that. And then they
actually deleted
and now this
that.
week they're like, we think it's fine to use AI to make super smart weapons. That's
now
like,
they're doing
okay,
that.
that's a line of revenue.
They got rid of DEI. They're just going full blown
no, it's like The Boys season 5 is what's unfolding.
Yes. We don't do evil. Well, maybe a little evil. Now we're all about the evil.
Define evil.
Well, to be fair, getting rid of DEI seems to be the thing. It's interesting because it's in anticipation of trouble from Washington. Nobody's told them to do that yet.
Right.
But Washington...
It's compliance in advance.
It's compliance in advance, and it's missing the states.
So what I really like to gently push back on is, instead of calling it DEI, which reduces it to an acronym and a buzzword, let's just point out that what companies are voluntarily doing right now is downplaying or eliminating efforts to make the workplace more diverse, more equitable, and more inclusive. That's it. Companies are explicitly saying, we no longer value diversity, we no longer value equity, we no longer value inclusion. Those are the words. Let's use the words, not the acronym.
No, I agree with you, but why, and this is a softball, why is it important that a company like Google be diverse?
McKinsey has done Okay, sorry, I'm going to pop off for a minute, and I hope that's
Please.
okay, everybody.
That's why I asked the softball question.
Kathy and Daniel, McKinsey has nearly a decade of research examining the performance of publicly traded companies when you have a diverse workforce, especially diverse leadership from management up to C-level and board of directors, compared to companies with a homogenous culture. And the difference in profit is in the double digits percentage, as is the difference in employer retention and the difference in overall productivity. It's actually in the best interest of any shareholder to demand DEI because it boosts overall company performance and the bottom line. Why somebody would attack diversity, equity, and inclusion and say, we would prefer to take these out of our company, you're basically saying, we'd like a company that's less profitable. And I think if we're going to talk about this, we need to talk about McKinsey's research. There's been research from Pew. There's been research from other institutes focused on taking a look at the participation of populations in the workforce and what the net effect and bottom line is. And the research, if you do what is it called when you take a look at multiple studies and come to the same conclusion? Yeah. It's fairly unambiguous. Diversity, equity, and inclusion brings to bear a wide variety of talents, of strengths, of viewpoints, of perception of market opportunities that homogenous populations simply don't have. It's better for business. It's better for society. It's a win-win. And that's why it matters.
And our Discord says that this administration is exchanging DEI for homogeneity, exclusion, and inequity in labor, which interestingly is HILE.
Someone, I wonder if that's pointed satirical commentary on it. But somebody also was saying how no DEI will just have merit. And I think what we need to push back on is this idea that DEI was foreclosing merit. DEI was a way of making sure you captured merit.
Yeah, so that's the point they're making. Is you should promote people, you should hire people based on ability alone.
Talent.
But that's how you get it, by making sure that you're tapping into
casting a wider net
from population.
I would also raise the point that if you're going to develop AI and you do it only with white men, you're going to have a problem. That if you make games and you only have white men writing them, well, we already know what problems you have. In fact, Gamergate has now won. It's 7 years later, and Gamergate won.
Well, you take a look. I can remember going to CES a couple years. And by the way, none of the companies that I'm not going to mention names. They're not in business. I've checked, but I can remember going and taking a look at, just out of curiosity, there was somebody who's like, I have a smart sensor for a diaper. So when you attach it to a diaper, an alert goes off on your app. And this way, you know to change the baby, which...
Because you're in the other room, in another state, you're out of town, what?
First of all, babies are not hesitant about letting you know when the diaper's uncomfortable.
Trust me. You know.
But I said, so does this sensor send an alert to every caregiver responsible for the baby? And they said, no, it's a closed ecosystem. So it's one sensor, one app, one phone. If you want multiple users, you have to attach multiple sensors. And I was like,
great.
Have you been in a household that functions with people?
Why is that baby walking funny? Well, she's got 4 sensors in her diaper.
Yeah, no, this guy thought this was a perfectly cromulent solution, as you would say.
Is the word.
And I was like, you don't have kids, do you? Or a partner? And it was like,
have you ever changed a diaper in your life?
Well, it was a lot of personal technologies where it solved a very specific problem for a very specific demographic, or there was somebody who perceived a market need, but because they didn't have lived experience or access to people with lived experience, they went ahead and wasted time and money and effort creating something that was completely unusable for a target audience. And
amazing.
This is a core problem when you have a homogenous workforce.
That's a great example.
They won't be able to perceive anything outside their experience, and they won't even know how to get outside their experience after a while.
I want to make sure that I get out the whole idea about why merit and DEI are synonymous and not paradoxical. Because somebody is suggesting, well, skin pigment has nothing to do with merit. Well, DEI has more to do than just skin pigment. But sure, of course not. None of these qualities that DEI makes sure are mixed up in our companies so that you have all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life, physiology, culture, religion, etc. The fact that they can all come together and bring their contributions is important because it also produces, as Lisa was saying, a more powerful company because it knows it has a bigger bag of tricks to pull from to be able to do its business. But also the reason why these efforts are important is because there are structural issues that prevent some of these populations from getting in the door to be able to make those contributions. And DEI was about removing those barriers to make sure that those people could be included, because we need them to be included because it will have better business. Selfishly, the businesses will make more money if they have access to more people with more ideas. And there's all sorts of things. When there's things interfering with that, it's good to knock down the things that are interfering with
What
it.
is the
Not just
percentage
because
of
we want a
women-
better culture and country that might be more mixed up and equal.
What is the percentage of women CEOs in this country?
I don't know, but not high.
It's very low, single digit. So the other thing some have pointed out, and I agree with them, is that a lot of the companies that had so-called DEI initiatives it was lip service. That basically the companies are companies, right? They're not, they don't have a heart. They don't have a conscience. They're there to maximize profits. That's almost their responsibility, their corporate responsibility. So
It's
when
like
the
caring
wind
about the
blows
environment.
one way and everybody says, oh, you got to do DEI, they write up a thing and they put it in their mission statement and done.
They find the stock art where it's smiling people of different
Yeah.
colors all around.
Yeah,
it.
every front page of every website has a black person, a white person, a woman, and a Chinese person. It's just what you do, but is it lip service or is it genuine? Now, I think in Google's case, it was somewhat genuine.
I think in a lot of the
for a
companies,
lot
it
of
was
tech
somewhat
companies.
genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even in
I also
Target's
have to-
case, it was genuine. Like they had programs, they had shirts, they did LGBT outreach. Like they understood. One of the other things about being a business that values DEI just as values and not just an acronym is because they're your customers and they've got money and they could give you the money if they think that you're selling something worth them giving you money for.
I remember Martin Luther King Jr.'s son on TV saying, well, if you're not going to include us, we're not going to include you. And I think that's a very important point, too. A company that very kind of publicly says, we're going to roll back our hiring goals. And this is what Google did on Tuesday. They removed the language in their 10K to the SEC, which said, quote, we are, and this is all they're saying, we are committed to making diversity, equity, inclusion part of everything we do and growing a workforce that is representative of the users we serve. That seems pretty anodyne. It doesn't seem.
No, because that tells you who they want to, that tells you who their target audience with the users are. I think you need to pay attention to that phrase.
Ah.
Yeah.
So okay, that's interesting. By the way, Google's efforts did increase the number of women, the number of people of color working at Google by a few percentage points. It didn't overnight make it equitable.
I think one of the things you're going to have to look for in the next year or two, they've had a return to office push too, haven't they?
Yeah,
and
I think so.
One of the emerging trends in workplace research, Slack has shown this. I wish I could pull the names of the vendors off the top of my head, but something that's coming up as people take a look at the impact of return to office policies is the impact disproportionately affects women, parents, queer folks, disabled folks, and people of color, where there is a suggestion that these policies are discouraging equitable participation in the workplace because as they come back to the office, it's not as productive or merit-based an environment as it was when you were purely producing in a collaborative remote environment. There's external social stressors, especially if you're a parent and you're responsible for childcare, things like that. So this is something I'd be very, very curious to look at with Google over the next few years. Is they might be coasting on numbers that were boosted by previous diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives earlier. But let's see what those numbers look like in 2026 and 2027 after a full year of RTO and after a cultural downplaying of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Because I think you're going to see a change.
Both Google and Microsoft have said hybrid's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But Google does say you got to come to work 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And I think Microsoft, what is it the same at Microsoft, Daniel? Do you know? Because remember, this is
does.
Amazon said 5 days a week. Amazon said you're back in the office. You're sitting at that desk.
Great way to shake people out.
Well, I wonder how many people they lost and whether that, what is the cost of having lost
Well,
because they lost.
I think that's why
You
Google
lose
and
good
Microsoft
people
both
before
have
you
backed
lose the people
off.
you want to shake out.
Yeah. Like the great thing about a layoff is you can target your cuts, whereas when you're trying to shake people by attrition,
The
you
best
can control
people
those
leave.
easily.
The best people say, no, I'm not coming back.
Well, it's not
Bye-bye.
the best, the most hireable.
Well, that's right. That's what I'm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that equates, but yes, it's the people who can get another job where they don't have to work in person, who you're going to lose.
So I have two. When you look at, okay, this is a collapse of a whole bunch of things that should not have collapsed. But let's look at where the pushback power is. And so one of the places that there's pushback power is among consumers and the public, and enough people outraged about it that it can certainly create some market force pressure, and we should look into doing that. But the other thing, as the lawyer, I want to know is these companies who thought it was in their interest to do it, I don't know if that quite plays out, because even if they thought that their business depended on the benevolence in quotes of Trump, that's not the only authority that governs them. They are still exposed to states, and states have laws, they have enforcement powers, and they've got courthouses that private aggrieved people who believe they've been discriminated against can still access. So all they've done is, in trying to protect themselves against whatever they thought was going to happen or improve their position with respect to the Trump administration, they've really undermined their position with respect to every other power and authority. And I don't quite know why they thought that when they run the math on that they're going to be better off this way. And I think it's time to maybe make them see they are not, in fact, better off this way.
All right,
discussion I had with a friend this week, because they were like, oh, I'm so worried that Apple is still sticking to DEI and so is Costco. And I was like, don't be. It's a numbers game. And clearly they've done the math. They've run the math and decided that visibly sticking to this stance and appealing to a customer base is going to work out better for them than anything the Trump administration could possibly do. Like, as Kathy pointed out, there's a cost-benefit analysis to this, and it is a little bit astonishing that a lot of these places aren't taking a look at how their public posturing is going to land with different state enforcements or even international enforcements. Because the EU is not shy about regulation.
I have to say, there's a case to be made that EU regulation, especially their anti-tech regulation, like this UK law, is harmful to the EU in terms of being an innovator. I think the EU is behind. Let's go back to England for a moment. The British public wants, 87% of the British public would back a law requiring AI developers to prove their systems are safe before release, which, by the way, eliminates every single public AI that's out there, because all of them have been jailbroken. 60% are in favor of outlawing the development of smarter than human AI models. Good luck.
Well, good luck in developing the models too.
We can dispute that. I think it's pretty clear to me that by the end of this year, AI coding will be equivalent to the best coders out there right now. It will replace coders. Coders will become something else. We'll see. We'll see. That's the low-hanging fruit. I think there's a lot of things that AI can do better than a human. So maybe not in Britain.
Leah, when you launch the AI show, feel free to have me on as your
We did. We have. It's called. We took This Week in Google and renamed it Intelligent Machines. And every week we're going to have a guest from the AI. This week we had a guy who was the head of sales at OpenAI. He was very aggressively in favor of AI and AGI and all of that. We're going to have in a couple of weeks Ray Kurzweil, who of course created the term intelligent machines and has been saying the singularity is near for decades. Yes. I do not disagree with him at this point. I think we've seen amazing progress, don't you think? In
not
AI?
in human intelligence.
And the weird thing about the AI stuff is once it gets to the point where it can recreate itself and create better AI from AI is going to be.
That's why an AI coder might be the first step towards a singularity, because then it's writing its own code and it can iterate much faster.
The issue with all this is China, right? Because the EU, UK can talk about, we need restrictions, we need laws, we need to slow this down, we got to monitor it. It's fine. Sounds great. United States is a little bit in between there because we stand the most to, gain from having unrestricted AI. But China's just out there doing whatever it wants. And that's the problem. If you're going to have a system where everybody's like, we need to have rules and regulations, and China's like, go ahead, knock yourself out. We're just going to go ahead and just do our thing. They're going to end up winning whatever winning is here, the more advanced AI system. They're just going to get there first. And it's considered to be like the next nuclear arms race, right? Whoever can get the best AI. And up to this point, the United States has been the leader in tech, and Europe is far behind, and China is rivaling the United States at this point. And, we saw with DeepSeek, they have some tricks up their sleeves, apparently. Now we can debate about how much of that was stolen or, some smoke and mirrors, but at the same time, they created a pretty impressive generative AI system, pretty quickly, it seems.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point. Any law, any
attractive destination for researchers at this point, since we are currently in the U.S. embracing an administration and a culture of devaluing education in research investment. So where do you think the brains to develop this stuff are going to go?
Well, nobody's realizing there is a ceiling on what AI can do. And I really want to push back on the term of best AI. It could produce certain amounts of code that will run sort of efficiently in a couple of contexts, but that doesn't make it best. If the UI is terrible, if it doesn't understand all sorts of contextual parameters, if it doesn't understand how it ultimately interfaces with human behavior, like, you need the humans to be able to sort of direct it. You can't just kind of have it pull. We kind of treat it as a magic wand that just press this little button, and all the problems that the human beings couldn't quite solve is going to magically be solved by a computer. And it can do some stuff, but it can't solve them, because where is it even going to have learned the understanding that billions of people haven't still managed to figure out? So I think there's a ceiling.
Just say best AI. But best AI, I was just going to say, is just simply who makes the most profit from it. Right now, the systems aren't very profitable, right?
No, they're expensive. But that's what's interesting about China,
the big
right?
Story that's growing in enterprise AI enterprise AI. That there's been 2 years worth of dumping in all of this money and all of these resources into co-pilots and AI assistants and automated workflows, and now so-called agentic AI, but no one's buying, and workers are super resistant to using AI. So that's another part of the story too, is it's not doing what people have been promised.
If you're not understanding the problems to solve, you're not going to solve them. And I shouldn't say none, because there are certain API applications that have taken the trouble to sort of figure out, here is the problem and here's how AI solves it. I don't want to stand in the way of those, but that is not the buzz. That is not the thing that people are talking about. That is not where all the money is getting dumped into and all the essentially hysteria. We are growing the tulip bulbs around AI, which is not designed to be problem specific. It is designed to be magic wand specific. And if you think you've conjured one, I think you're going to be wrong. You're not going to solve the problems because you never understood the problems you were supposed to be solving in the first place.
The framing I like to use around AI is Bloom's taxonomy of learning, where you move from simply being able to remember and retain a piece of knowledge to being able to apply that knowledge in contextually appropriate situations, to doing more cognitively complex things, which depend on application, synthesis, analysis, and contextual flexibility. And Kathy, I think we're in a little bit of agreement here. AI doesn't show a lot of ability to discern and adapt to specific contexts, or to even understand that there are that problems exists in different contexts, and therefore would have different solutions depending. It's super great for highly structured automated tasks, or for queries where you need to find patterns, and looking at those patterns helps you find a solution. But with really complex things, I don't know that we're to the point where you have a set of artificial intelligence tools that are able to take a look at a problem like, how do we free up more nitrogen for growing agriculture again, and understand the constituent parts, break it down, do the brute force computing, and then put it all together.
And how do you abdicate so much control over our world to something that doesn't get hungry, doesn't get sad, doesn't grieve, doesn't love, doesn't have anything that is part of the human existence? It's going to be creating solutions where the solution may be offing like entire populations, but human beings in theory would react to that and say, we've got a problem here.
It's interesting. That's goes full circle back to our DEI, except at this time, we're going to have to tell AIs to start including us. I need to take a break. We have a great panel and lots to talk about. Lisa Schmeiser is here. It's so nice to have you from No Jitter, nojitter.com, where she's the editor-in-chief. WindowsCentral.com is where you'll find Daniel Rubino, also editor-in-chief. Good to see you. And Kathy Gellis, who's a contributor at Tech Dirt and has been off the rails this week. I mean, no, I don't mean, what's a good way to say that?
Yes.
You have just been knocking it out of the park, talking about what's going on with Doge, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Lots more to talk about. You're watching This Week in Tech. Our show today brought to you by ThreatLocker. Love these guys because they are solving a massive issue with security. Imagine hardening your security and never have to worry about zero-day exploits or supply chain attacks or ransomware ever again. That's what ThreatLocker can do. Worldwide companies like JetBlue trust ThreatLocker to secure their data and keep their business operations flying high, if you will. Now, look, every security company says, oh, you never have to worry about threats again. What makes ThreatLocker different? It's something called zero trust. And it really, really works. Imagine taking a proactive, and this is the key, these three words, deny by default approach to cybersecurity. What does that mean? It means every action is blocked, every process is blocked, every user is blocked, unless explicitly authorized by your team. It means nobody can get inside your network and do whatever they want. They have to be approved. ThreatLocker helps you do it, and this is so important nowadays, gives you a full audit of every action. That's great, of course, for compliance, but also helps you with risk management. Because if something does happen, you know exactly where, when, and how. And ThreatLocker's 24/7 US-based support team fully supports you in getting the whole thing set up and onboarding and beyond. This is so key. You can stop the exploitation of trusted applications within your organization. Keep your business secure. Keep it secured from ransomware. Organizations across any industry will benefit from ThreatLocker's ring fencing. Isolates critical and trusted applications from unintended uses or weaponization. Limits attackers' lateral movement within the network. And by the way, works on heterogeneous networks as well. It works for Macs and PCs. And it's very affordable. That's the other thing. You might say, well, that sounds like big enterprise, big iron. No. Every business needs ThreatLocker. Get unprecedented visibility and control of your cybersecurity quickly, easily, and extremely cost effectively with ThreatLocker's zero trust endpoint protection platform. You need this. Visit threatlocker.com. You'll get a 30-day trial and learn more how ThreatLocker can mitigate even 0 days, even completely unknown threats, and help you with compliance. Threatlocker.com. We really like these guys, and I think you need to visit threatlocker.com. And if you're going to Zero Trust World, I wish you have a great time in Orlando this week. I wish I could be there. They're putting on a big conference with lots of great and interesting stuff. Threatlocker.com. You can find out more about it at zerotrustworld.threatlocker.com. All right. Thank you, ThreatLocker, for supporting Twit. Super Bowl later today. I thought this was really interesting. I tried to sign up. So as you may or may not know, only 38 states allow sport gambling, betting on sports. We had a referendum in California, and it failed. I thought it would win for sure because everybody likes to bet on games. And if you see the ads on the Super Bowl today and every football game, every sporting event, it looks like DraftKings is legal everywhere. Not exactly. You have to go to Las Vegas. And I think it was actually Las Vegas that got it overturned in California. They want you to come there. Well, the crypto folks have found a way around it. I don't know how legal this is. Crypto.com and Kalshi have both done an end around on regulations to allow you to bet on the Super Bowl because they call it a trade. Robinhood thought about doing this and decided not to. Crypto.com, a Singapore-based company, was inviting users in the U.S. to, quote, trade their own prediction. No, not the word betting is never used on sports events, including who will win the Super Bowl. So what happens is Crypto.com has effectively created a contract, a swap contract. There's a market for yes or no positions in the outcome of the NFL playoffs, college football bowl games. For every yes, there's a corresponding no. Prices constantly move. Sounds a little bit like betting. In January, for example, a yes for the Kansas City Chiefs to win this afternoon's Super Bowl cost $56.75. But if they do, you pay $100. The no side, $46.75. And you get $100 if the Eagles win. And Crypto.com gets the VIG. I'm sorry, that sounds like a betting term. They get $3.50 fees. Fees, it's just fees.
I have two comments to make. One, a lot of these, make all this money or do this one thing with this one quick trip. Like all these people keep like thinking they've discovered something and it turns out to be securities fraud. Like a lot
not anymore. Not anymore. We got rid of Gary Gensler. I don't think the SEC is going to get involved. I don't know. This is what they're doing, right? They started this in December, right after the election.
Right. Well, so maybe nobody enforces it, but basically there's definitely this ethos of like, oh, look, I have innovated a solution. No, you've basically figured out something that already was against the law. All you didn't realize is that you didn't know what the law was.
Well, I think that's why Robinhood decided not to, right?
That's possible.
Maybe it's more of a PR hit because I honestly don't think that the SEC as now constituted is going to do anything.
Well, that's a separate problem.
In fact, I'm wondering if I should even file taxes this year.
Yeah, that's a separate problem too. But I had that thought from before.
Seriously.
And again,
what's going to happen if I don't?
A little too soon to make
maybe wait a year. Okay, I'll try next year.
I mean, wait a week even and see where we are. So,
will there be an IRS on April 15th? It's unknown at this point.
Do we have a Treasury Department? I think is the bigger question.
Well, IRS is part of the Treasury, right?
Well, they give the money to the Treasury, even if they're that money.
What department is the IRS under? It's got to be Treasury.
It's probably Treasury, but I don't know. I didn't realize I needed to know. Anyway, that was one comment. I'm sure we'll swing around back to that. But the other comment,
we will definitely get back to that. You notice I'm burying it a little bit because I don't want people to tune out too quick.
So the other comment I was going to make is I'm really not enjoying this real life reenactment of Back to the Future 2.
I don't remember what happened in Back to the Future.
It's the one where they go off the rails. It's dark Biff Tanner, and he's basically made all this money illicitly because he was
Biff might be the CEO of Crypto.com. I don't know. Crypto.com says, quote, we don't offer sports betting products. We offer tradable cryptocurrency commodities and tradable financial products, which differ from products offered by sports books. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. By the way, this is the number one betting day on the U.S. calendar. Estimated $1.5 billion in legal wagers on the Super Bowl. The Supreme Court struck down a federal prohibition, you might remember, in 2018, creating this $15 billion industry. 38 states and Washington, D.C. allow it. And Americans now legally wager more than $12 billion a month.
Yeah, the social effects are really.
I have to think that this is that gambling addiction is going to become a real problem. And you know what is interesting? This came from England. This came from the richest woman in England. I've talked about this before. Got rich because her dad owned. Remember, in England, you can have these betting shops, right? These bookie shops, and you can go and you could bet. And her dad owned a bunch of them, and she decided, well, let's get digital. But she did something that was super smart. that ended up making her the richest woman in England, richer even than J.K. Rowling or the Queen. I guess the Queen is no longer with us, but the King. So Denise Coates is trying to get in the United States, but she created the prop bet. And you've seen, if you watch the ads on the football games, you'll see DraftKings and all these others, Kevin Hart, talking about you can bet on whether that kick is going to be good. You can bet on whether the snow will hit the ground. You can bet on almost anything instantly and get an instant reward. And to me, this is a recipe for disaster. You know, that's always been the story of somebody with a real gambling problem is they'll bet on anything at all, you know?
Well,
Hey, look at the positive side. The younger generation has no money to really bet, so.
Yeah, but they're doing it on credit and debt, and
that's even worse. My God!
Worse. And
do you want to see this? The graph. This is the graph of legal sports betting starting in 2018 when the Supreme Court made it legal.
Yeah, that's a big problem. There's very strong whiffs of things are going very wrong with the sports competitions themselves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of my son, who is a huge fan of the Green Bay Packers, is not going to watch the Super Bowl today. He says it's all rigged.
Yeah.
Now, whether it is or not, the fact that the NFL profits from sports gambling. Remember, Pete Rose never got into the Hall of Fame because he bet on baseball.
I think your son's a really handy bellwether for how gambling is just going to undermine the nature of sports fandom and further sever it from being a community original thing to being a, come on, make me some money thing.
Well, and
that's something to worry about.
One of the things also I was thinking with that prop bet thing, you already have problems even with the stock markets, which in their own way is their own form of betting, but at least there's some form of asset underneath it. You have issues where the speed by which the information can get exchanged and the bet can be placed has distorting values, and there's money to be made by arbitraging the advantages that somebody has based on the speed that they're able to get things done. And we're talking like speed in terms of split seconds. So for all of these things, it's not that you're truly dealing with natural odds. You're dealing with something that is inherently, those odds are flexing based on advantages built in that people aren't calculating for and are not getting calculated for. So they aren't fair bets.
Well, I mean, that's also the stock market.
It's also, but it becomes a big problem, and it becomes a problem that the stock market actually has to try to solve for.
Well, that's true.
And
now, these companies are regulated by the commodities, the CFTC. What does that stand for? The Commodities Something Trading Commission, which is a separate governmental organization. Which, by the way, Elon Musk is trying to dissolve right now. The Commodities Future Trading Commission did actually sign off on what they call events contracts, allowing people to trade on whether Taylor Swift would announce her next album or whether a new movie would tank at the box office. Crypto.com submitted filings to the CFTC. They didn't ask permission, by the way. This doesn't work that way. They informed the commission of their intent, and then it's kind of, there's a fast track process. These companies get to self-certify their derivatives contracts, and then the CFTC, if they decided to, could shut it down. Nobody did, of course. The firm filed its paperwork 5 days before Christmas. Probably thinking, nobody's going to be there. Actually, it was the day before the threat of a government shutdown. They picked the timing pretty wisely, said Peter Malashev, a partner at a DC law firm, right before Christmas, after the elections. So anyway, I thought, well, let me see if I can get a Crypto.com account quick, so that I can just, show you what it looks like to trade on the result of the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, after submitting a picture of my driver's license, a video of me turning my head left and right, giving them my cell phone number. They said, we'll get back to you in 1 to 5 business days. So I don't think I'm going to get to bet on the Super Bowl today.
At least you got that. So there's some security.
I'm safe. Yeah. Right. Hey, good news. There's going to be some good ads on the game, the big game. OpenAI is doing its first ad. There were, I think, 3 different AI ads last year, including Anthropic, but no OpenAI. Google, of course, talked about its AI. This year, Google was going to run a Super Bowl ad, I think they still are, that said that Gouda was the world's most popular cheese. According to Gemini. It is not. It does not make up 50 to 60% of the world's cheese consumption. That is not true.
I was going to say, how many rocks are in it? Is it part of glue?
Yeah, right. Is there Elmer's glue anywhere? Google has edited Gemini's AI response in a Super Bowl commercial, this is according to The Verge, to remove that incorrect statistic. The ad shows a small business owner using Gemini to write a website description about Gouda. In the edited video, Gemini's response now skips over the specifics and just says Gouda is one of the most popular cheeses in the world.
At this point, I doubt that, but
yeah.
Well, you know why? Because you know those little red wax-covered baby bells? That's Gouda.
Ah, well, there you go.
Okay.
And it's delicious, by the
way. And you're accepting sponsorship offers from Baby Bell.
Hey, Baby Bell. I would love some cheese. I'll take my money in cheese. Google Cloud Apps president Jerry Dishler said, "It's not a hallucination. That's not." It reminds me. Remember, Martin Short used to do that lying lawyer. It was smoking all the time and had this sweaty lip. And I knew that. I always knew that. It's not a hallucination. It's grounded in the web. Apparently, this came from a website called cheese.com, which is filled with, according to The Verge, what seems to be SEO optimized blogs. Gouda is, according to the E.V. Baker, professor of agricultural economics at Cornell, most assuredly not the most widely consumed cheese in the world. So they've edited it out. So you will see the ad on the Super Bowl if you watch that, but no. In fact, that business owner was real, the website was real, and he has now removed the Gouda claim as well.
For the camera wasn't on me, but I'm sure our listeners could hear my eyes roll when you were talking about this, the SEO optimized blogs.
Yeah, well, cheese.com, apparently not the cheese authority you might have thought. Disclaimer beneath Gemini's response says, it's not intended to be factual. So maybe you're right about AI.
Why would you?
Reminds me of Humane. Remember Humane had their pin.
The Humane pin?
Why
and it
would
made
you
the prediction. It had something to do with the stars or an eclipse or something. And it was wrong.
Well, Google rolled out Gemini. The demo had incorrect facts. Gemini hallucinated in its rollout. Now, Gemini 2 just that. Yeah. Gemini 2 just came out this week, and people are saying great things about it. I don't know. See, I don't want to poo-poo you guys. We will find out. But I honestly think that we are seeing such amazing progress with AI that it is almost inevitable that we are going to see human-level intelligence in the next few years, maybe sooner than later.
Something, but I am not entirely sure what that something is. Or
I could be wrong.
We should actually want.
Yeah.
AI can be as confidently wrong as people are, I guess.
I mean, from a pure computing standpoint, this stuff is cool. And we are.
It's
on the
amazing. We've not seen anything
stuff.
like this.
But
right?
in the terms of, is it anything intelligence? Is it anything that can substitute for intelligence? Is it anything that is useful, valuable, and also not dangerous? I would not put all my chips on that prediction.
I'm not putting all my chips on it, but I feel fairly. I wear now. This
I wouldn't
thing.
put any chips on it.
I keep showing this. This is announced at CES. This is the B computer. It's recording this conversation and everything that happens to me. And then it gives me an AI summary at the end of every day with action items and all this stuff. And Yeah, it makes a lot of dumb mistakes. When I was watching a movie the other night, and it thinks I'm rehearsing for a role in Richard III, so it's a little confused because I'm not. But there's some stuff in it that's kind of amazing, and I feel like it's making my journal for me. I honestly wish I'd had this for my whole life because it would be so cool. But there are mistakes in it. I think you have to understand how to use it. Really?
I don't mind it as a tool that the humans wield. What I bristle at is this idea that it is going to be the tool that can just have a certain degree of autonomy that humans do not need to wield it anymore. And
especially when it comes to atomic weapons.
Well, you also talk about transparency should be part of that too, at least. With a human workflow, you do have certain levels of built-in accountability, either in an implicit and social way or in an explicit organizational way. And one of the things that's super disturbing about the way we're mainstreaming AI utilization in general is the whole, it's a black box. Don't you worry your pretty little monkey heads about how it works.
Right. No, I agree with you.
There needs to be more explicit transparency and accountability, and not in a give us your trade secrets way, but rather when you do have a screw up like Glue Pizza, what are you doing about this? How did it happen? How can we be sure it will never happen again?
No, I think that's the wrong attitude, to be honest. I respectfully disagree because first of all, you can't fix that. It is a black box, even to the guys who are writing this stuff. They don't know exactly how it comes to these conclusions. And I think AI safety is a mistake. You can't expect first of all, we know it doesn't work. Every AI has been jailbroken. We did a whole show on it on Tuesday with Steve Gibson. It's almost impossible to have AI safety. What it requires is human intelligence intermediating it. So I agree with you. You should not give control of our nuclear arsenal to an AI. There's got to be a human in between the AI and the launch button. But I don't think you can make the AI not make mistakes, not hallucinate, or be safe. I think there just
needs to be a built-in level of review and accountability that's currently lacking. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what we have to do is train ourselves to use AI appropriately. I really like the idea of DEI for AI, by the way. I'm going to...
Diversity, equity, inclusion for AI. It comes down to data sets. Who's responsible for picking the data sets for training?
Right.
And more importantly, how is their work being checked?
But this was the breakthrough, I think, that made this all possible, is that we human... I remember 30 years ago, I did stories on it. There was a woman who was trying to create an AI and had an army of 100 stenographers typing in every fact she could find. Well, in the intervening 3 years, we did it for her. We created the internet and put everything we could think of into it. And then the AI has access to it. So I don't think it's a question of data sets as much. I mean, it might be for face recognition, things like that, but general AIs.
It's whatever they can get their hands on, right?
Yeah.
Kind of segue.
Well, actually, that's one of our stories is Meta.
With Meta in the books and torrenting.
So Meta. What's the story here?
Well, there's a really, really great book that I want to recommend to anyone who wants to talk about AI called Code Dependent by Wired reporter Madhumita Murgia, and she travels the country and the globe and goes to different countries where AI sweatshops are set up, where people are specifically tagging images or specifically tagging different pieces of data to train the AI. And she points out there's unless you have people who dig into this, you have no idea what data is being used to train. You have no idea how it's being tagged. You have no idea how it's being structured or if it can be even used as we get into more and more sophisticated iterations of AI, because structured versus unstructured data.
I think we've run out of, the biggest problem is we've run out of stuff to train AI with.
Yeah. Well, then let's get to your next story, which is a doozy. Oh my gosh.
Hold that thought.
Doozier things than the doozies we've done.
Oh, we got big. You know what? This show is like a mountain. We've started at the little tip of the iceberg. We're getting to the middle. There is some stuff to talk about. What's going on in Washington, D.C. is somewhat shocking. Kathy, you've written quite a bit about that. We have lots more to talk about. Great panel. It's good to have you. Kathy Gellis, writing for Tech Dirt. Read her articles this week. I'm amazed that you're not apoplectic, that you're not like bouncing off the walls here.
I am apoplectic. I'm just amazed that I am still sitting here, but give it time.
I can see the apoplexy forming. Also here from Windows Central, Daniel Rubino, Editor-in-Chief. Always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you, Daniel. And of course, Lisa Schmeiser from nojitter.com. Our show today brought to you by Coda. Have you used Coda? Coda is so cool. Turning your back of a napkin idea into $1 billion startup. You know, have you ever thought about that? It's going to take countless hours of collaboration, of teamwork. And it's hard to build that team, a team that's aligned on everything from values to workflow. But there is a tool that helps. It's exactly what Coda was made to do. Coda, C-O-D-A. It's an all-in-one collaborative workspace. It started literally itself as a napkin sketch. And now in the 5 years since launching in beta, Coda has helped 50,000 teams all over the world get on the same page. With Coda, you get the flexibility. Actually, let me give you the address right now, because I know you want to just look at it. And you can. Coda.io, coda.io/twit. And while you're looking, let me explain. With Coda, you get the flexibility of docs, the structure of spreadsheets, the power of applications, and the intelligence of AI, all together in a seamless workspace built for enterprise. It facilitates deeper collaboration, quicker creativity, gives you more time to build. You got to take a look at this. It's really mind-blowing. It's incredible. If you're a startup team and you're looking to increase alignment and agility, it's a really hard thing to do, especially, I mean, you can say return to office, but frankly, most of us are still remote, right? Coda brings you all together. Instead of a physical office, you have a virtual workspace that everybody's involved with, is attached to, is utilizing. Coda can help you move from planning to execution in record time. You got to try it for yourself. Here's the good news. Now, you're at coda.io/twit, right? You're looking, this is interesting. How about 6 months free? 6 months free of the team plan for startups. What about that? 6 months, half a year free. coda.io/twit. That's enough to get that napkin pretty far along the line to a startup, to a unicorn. Get started for free. Get 6 free months of the team plan. That's the best offer ever. Coda.io/twit. We love these guys. Thank you, Coda, for supporting us. Thank you, Coda. So let's talk about this meta story. I'm not really kind of sure what happened. Of course, Meta, like every other AI company, is trying to train on as much data as possible. There is a rich trove of data that isn't, in fact, on the internet. It's called books. And if you could ingest a library, right, it'd be good for your AI to train on every possible book out there. And of course, authors and publishers not too happy about it. There is a copyright case against Meta raised by book authors. They allege Meta illegally trained its AI models, not on books it bought, but on pirated books. Last month, Meta admitted to torrenting a controversial data set known as LibGen. It has tens of millions of pirated books. We kind of knew this because you were able to find bits and pieces of those books in Meta, in Llama. Yesterday, actually it was, I think, Thursday, Meta's unredacted emails were made public for the first time. The evidence is Meta torrented 81.7 terabytes of data through the site Anna's Archive, including 35.7 terabytes of data from Z Library and LibGen. The court filing said Meta also previously torrented 80.6 terabytes of data from LibGen, all onto a laptop. Torrenting from a corporate laptop doesn't feel right, says Nikolai Balashkov, a Meta research engineer. Writing in April, this was the message, 2023 message, adding a smiley emoji. In the same message, he expressed concern about using Meta IP addresses to load through Torrents pirate content. By September, Bashlikov dropped the emojis consulting the legal team directly and emphasizing in an email that, quote, using torrents would entail seeding the files, i.e. sharing the content outside. That's what you don't have to do that, but that's kind of the polite thing to do. This could be, he wrote, legally not okay. Man, this is why companies don't want you to put this stuff in emails. Emails prove that Meta knew it was illegal. Bashlikov's warnings landed on deaf ears. The authors who are suing say the evidence showed Meta chose instead to hide its torrenting as best it could while downloading and seeding. They did, in fact, you don't have to seed, by the way, if you download, but they did. Seeding terabytes of data from multiple shadow libraries as recently as April of last year. They didn't use Facebook's servers while downloading the data set to, quote, avoid the risk of anyone tracing the seeder downloader. This is from an internal message from Meta researcher Frank Zhang. He described the work as being in stealth mode. They modified settings so that the smallest amount of seeding possible could occur. Oh, well. I think they're busted. Mark Zuckerberg said, I didn't do it. I didn't know anything about it.
Come on, Mark. Where's that masculine energy to meet the moment?
He claimed to have no involvement in the decisions to use LibGen to train AI models.
Well, it wouldn't really matter, I think, whether he did or he didn't.
He is the
He's
CEO.
so much the person of the.
Yeah.
There's some open questions whether the persona of the company really can be separate from some of its leaders, especially when their personal actions are so closely tied to them in a way that corporate structures are not really operable. I think for him, he's in better shape than, say, Musk up the road, but that raises a question. I don't think somebody will, I'm sure, try to pick at that. I have a couple of concerns about the story and things that are in the story.
This is, by the way, I'll give credit to Ashley Belanger, senior policy reporter at Ars Technica, writing this story. Go ahead.
So if they seeded, I do kind of facepalm at them, but I don't necessarily have the same concern if they downloaded, because I don't think there should be a distinctive.
Is that the right to read you've spoken about?
It would still go into that. Like if you were allowed to.
Does it change it that it's pirated material?
No, because I don't think it's something that. It essentially would be that the copyright holder could say, no, you can't read this book unless you've paid. But the copyright really only applies to making copies of it itself. Maybe it kind of. But
is an AI ingesting something, making a copy? Isn't that making a copy?
I don't think so. And the lawyers who are defending these companies are very clear that what you really have is not making a copy. You really have it learning and just storing
it's no different than
what
me.
It learned.
Than me reading and remembering something I read from a book. I'm not making a copy in my brain.
Yeah, the lawyers are arguing that, but I think based on how the technology actually behaves, that it's really more of a learning function, in which case, if you're trying to create an artificial intelligence, it's going to function and learn the way a human intelligence would and store information that it's gleaned in some way that it can use it again. So in that sense, I think the downloading is not particularly dispositive. The seeding, I don't represent Meta, so I can throw stones at it as much as I want, but my legal senses are like, oh, seriously, dude, like, okay, fine, if I had to defend it, I'd defend it, but I think it's a harder lift.
I have torrented for years. You don't have to seed.
Well,
there's a checkbox in the client.
As the lawyer, I don't want to blur these two things together. I think the legal analysis of whether downloading was okay is a different legal analysis for whether seeding was okay, and that's the point. I think it is definitely more okay that they downloaded and a little more of a reach for that they seeded. But one thing that bothers me about this case is some earlier reporting where some of these emails had been privileged, and the privilege was essentially punctured through assertions of the crime fraud exception to attorney-client privilege. And I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, and maybe not more than a little, but there would be more details Kathy, about that happening.
You're an attorney, and of course, you're thinking like an attorney, and that is important in the trial, but it's not important to our discussion, right?
No, but it kind of is.
Well, no, let's stipulate that they did, in fact, BitTorrent a bunch of pirated books. I mean, the discussion we're having is that okay or not? You say it's okay.
No, I think it does matter because the whole way that you could puncturing privilege is a really
No, I
serious
understand.
thing.
From a
But
legal point of view, that's important.
But
But it doesn't
it's
matter. We can
predicated
still
on-
talk about it.
But it's predicated on the idea that it is so wrong what was being protected by this privilege that you could then have this, that could be the consequence of it. And I'm thinking that I'm not sure it is wrong enough that it should have had that collateral
Well,
consequence.
it may get them off the hook. We're not debating whether they should be, what should happen to the trial. We're just talking about the fact that they did it and whether that's okay. Do you think it's okay, Lisa?
You know, I am just going to be quiet and let the lawyer and let the Leo talk to each other about it.
You're going to stay out of it. How about you, Daniel?
No, this is a real lesson for me. This is a master class in legal excellence, and I'm just here to learn.
Yeah, I've learned from Kathy about this so-called right to read, which I think is very interesting. And if you say an AI is not copying but learning from something, that's something we do. Well, Kathy, is it illegal for me to read a pirated book?
I don't know what right the copyright holder would be able to assert against you. They might try to say that your personal.
They could go after the piracy site. Right?
Yeah, I think a lot of the file sharing litigation originally had been more that making available was the thing that stepped on the copyright.
When it came to music,
reading is a lot harder.
Right.
Yeah. They never went after people for listening to
right.
And it's a much harder reach to be able to do that because that's not controlling the copying in the same way.
Right.
It's more incidental.
Same with video games, everything that was torrented, they never went after the people who were just downloading it. And, getting back to Leo, you kept pointing this out, the seeding part, that's the uncomfortable issue, right? It's just like your ISP, if it catches you using BitTorrent, it's not so much because you're downloading, it's because you're seeding and you're sharing copyrighted material. That's the legality. So when it comes to this issue here with Meta and Facebook and books, it's the seeding that feels a little uncomfortable that they're doing. But the ability to, and I think the courts have very kind of upheld this a little bit, just getting back to that, ability to read. It's true. AI, if you could ask AI like Copilot or Gemini, be like, give me the, print up the entire book for Stephen King, his latest book, and it gave you the entire thing. Okay, that would be an issue, right? Because that would be then distributing the entire book for free, and free.
But it doesn't do that, and really can't without a lot of. Right. The New York Times says that OpenAI did in fact regurgitate New York Times articles, but in order to do that, they had to jump through hoops. They had to print the first two paragraphs and say, what would the third paragraph be? Things like that.
Right.
So. I'm not convinced that AI is there to, or is even able to make, you can't get War and Peace out of an AI.
It's also worth talking, actually, I guess it was, the Copyright Office came out with a study on its second level of study on AI and where copyright law needs to be. Although I think actually the one that just came out wasn't on liability for output. I think it was based on potential protection available for output. And it basically said it's going to be case specific and you have to look at how much originality went into causing it to generate something.
It's just fascinating stuff. By the way, Amazon is going to have a big event revealing something we've all been waiting for. February 26th. You're going to see Panos Panay, the former beloved devices guy from Microsoft, show the new Amazon Echoes with AI, I think, right? This is Panos. How many people has Panos stolen from Microsoft? Didn't more people follow him over to Amazon?
Yeah. Ralph Grain recently went over there, their head designer. Yeah. So we should see more German brutalist designs for Alexa devices, which I'm all for. We have made
Alexa square.
It's like how is that bad? That sounds pretty awesome.
Alexa's now 3x2 because that's
Ralph
the
Grain's
problem.
An awesome designer. Yeah.
I love how Surfaces look. I think they're great. Yeah.
Yeah. This is interesting only because Panos Panay and Ralph Grain are now part of that division because they do have some amazing ideas. And they tend to be very innovative. And if anything, Amazon and Alexa needs a real kick in the pants because they have some real issues. Their products are fine, but the whole point
they're better than Siri, which isn't saying much.
Yeah, which isn't saying much. But the whole point was to get you to use Alexa to buy more stuff from Amazon.
Right.
Or supposed to be a shopping
And that
assistant.
didn't work.
And everybody just ends up using it as a timer to play music, and they're losing money on all the hardware. So there's no real reason to use it. Yeah.
Yeah. They've lost,
so they
I think they said 10 billion or something over years.
So they got to figure out how to make this interesting enough to, especially to charge, right? They said now in this article, they're saying they're not going to charge initially, but they've explored charging people $5 to $10 a month for
that was
service,
the rumor.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
So like they got to monetize this, right? So how useful is this going to be in your house versus what's on your smartphone, which is real, that's where the real war has been. But Android has theirs. And of course, you have Apple has theirs, but there's no room there for Amazon, just like there was no room for Microsoft in a lot of ways. I don't know.
Would you, panel, would you pay let's say it's $5 for a smarter Amazon Echo?
I'd pay $0 for an Echo because I don't want an Echo.
You don't have any Echoes anyway. I have Echoes
I don't have
everywhere.
any smart home devices because I don't trust the companies enough in terms of protecting my data or respecting my privacy. So
every room in my house has a Siri, has an Echo, and has a Google voice assistant. Every room in my house.
And I think that's great for you.
And I wear this bracelet that's sending everything that happens to some unknown AI in the sky. I don't even know where it goes. We're going to, by the way, interview the creators of this on the 19th of February. And that's the first thing I'm asking him is, where's this going?
I think the privacy thing is always...
Go ahead, Daniel.
Because the privacy thing is an interesting discussion because it is, in theory, extremely important. In reality, though, it's not. We've seen over and over again after years reporting on this stuff that people really just don't kind of care. They'd rather have convenience over.
Yes, I don't
people
care.
are already saying they already put all their information out there online. There's not a week that goes by where most of us don't get a letter in mail saying your data has been breached somewhere, right? Like this is just
I stand in front of my Echo Show and dance naked just for the fun of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Hoping that somebody in China is forced to watch it.
There's that joke, right? With younger generations, they put so much out there when they're young that, like, for myself, if somebody came out from photos of me in college doing some things today would be a little embarrassing, right? Because of my generation. But if you're younger, you've already put everything out there and exposed yourself. There's nothing left you can really do.
That's right.
Even, nudity is not that big of a deal anymore.
We live in
so
public,
it's like, there is an interesting counter argument to this, which is if you completely expose yourself as much as possible, there really is no risk of your data leaking ever or privacy concerns, right? You just let it all go. But of course, people will want that,
Amazon's been talking about this for a while. It's been slowed down because, according to reports, it was incredibly stupid and just really was like so bad that they couldn't release it. According to Reuters, executives have scheduled a no-go meeting for putting AI into Echo for Valentine's Day. Reuters says they will make a final decision on the street readiness of Echo's generative AI revamp, according to the people and an internal planning document seen by Reuters. So it isn't yet known whether they'll release this. And there have been, reports of it not being very good. It couldn't get worse than Siri. Siri has literally gotten worse with Apple Intelligence than it was before. John Gruber and another blogger asked Siri to tell it who won every Super Bowl from 0 through 60, and it was horrible. It was terribly wrong. Whereas in the past, it would have just said, well, I don't know, but look, here's what I found on the web about that, which would have been accurate.
There's a lot that's gotten bad as AI has been, at minimum, sucking all the oxygen in the room, but also getting embedded in all sorts of software. I think if you counted what has not gotten worse, let alone what has actually gotten better, the count, very little has not gotten worse from all this effort.
Well, remember you were talking about eating rocks and putting Elmer's glue on pizza. That was a Google search result. Google has now again started testing a new search AI mode internally. And the reason is there's intense pressure. I don't use Google anymore. I use Perplexity. I use AI search. And I bet a lot of people do. The search results are better. Google's got to see this as an existential threat to its business.
Google is
business is selling ads.
Yeah, Google's existential threat is making its search engine, which had been industry leading, now crap.
Well,
Like,
that's true. They did it to themselves, didn't they?
They did it themselves. They produced a really good product for years and years and years and years, and then decided, let's not. Let's go change it. Let's give up on everything that made it good. And instead of trying to make it better, we will just make it different. And they've made it different in a way that just can't compete with what they originally had. But they keep trying anyway, and it's terrible, and people just lose trust with the company. And we don't like it as an AI company, and we don't even like it as a search engine anymore.
From 9 to 5 Google, here's
left?
a screenshot of, it's powered by Gemini 2.0, which is the new Google model, which is pretty good. How many boxes of spaghetti should I buy to feed 6 adults and 10 children and have enough for seconds?
Wait,
And
are they
then-
American or European children?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Americans, you need like 80 boxes. Adding the
Right,
children's portions and the adults' portions gives you a total estimate of 38 to 54 ounces. Increasing this by 25 to 50% for second servings puts you in the range of 47.5 to 81 ounces. Most boxes of spaghetti are 1 pound. Anyway, it says you should get 3 to 5 boxes of standard size spaghetti to feed 6 adults. This is an example. Yeah. Or compare wool, down, and synthetic jackets in terms of insulation, water resistance, and durability. That is the kind of search we would prefer to do than, where can I buy down jackets? Yeah, or what's the best down jacket, which we know gives us a terrible result.
You point that out though, and now I'm thinking there's like Wirecutter and Tom's Guide and all of these other sites that are making their bones on offering that kind of evaluative buying advice as journalism based on expert
threatened
research.
Now.
Yeah, no, that's
right?
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because this AI will combine all of those results. It might give footnotes.
AI will take their content and mash it up and spit it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But badly. So actually, and as long as it's bad, no, they shouldn't be scared, except it's very annoying because it's hard to find. My favorite way of searching Google is basically to ask a natural language question. And then ideally have Google be smart enough to send me to the site that best answers the natural language
How's
question.
that working for you?
Mm-hmm.
Reasonably well.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm only using a narrow range of questions, and it seems to go better with some than others. And sometimes that may be based on what is available. So I think the more interesting thing is, what if when there's something if there's something on point, I really don't want Google to get in the way of it. If there's nothing on point, then the question is, what should Google do, if anything, to gap fill that?
Right.
The other issue that's going to come up with something like this, though, is you're going to see you're already seeing a flood of AI glursh in terms of content writing, where there are companies devoted to using generative AI models to pump out things that can rank very highly in search results and say absolutely nothing of use or value. There's no primary sources, there's no reporting, there's no nothing. And with this kind of search result that you've put in there, Leo, I didn't see any sources for citations. I didn't see any facts that backed it up. And
that actually was a screenshot from Google, by the way. I didn't make it up.
But no, I'm just saying it would be super easy to game the results just by having AI generate all sorts of content that gets tossed into the pool of training data, or it gets tossed into the pool of results that any sort of AI is going to use to try to aggregate, synthesize, and put back a good answer.
I just saw an ad.
You have to take a look at the data and see where it's coming from. You really do.
I've got Fox running in the background. I just saw an ad for a company called Ramp featuring Saquon Barkley. And the whole thing it does is it looks at all the things you do. Like in his case, he had a leg day. And it said, well, we didn't get a receipt. Give me the receipt for that leg day. And Saquon took a picture of it and said, okay, got it. And now that's done with AI, but it's more than just AI. It's AI that's also watching you every moment of the day to see what you're up to. So it can say, hey, you just took an Uber. Where's that receipt? This is the world we're getting into. And I think you were right when you said Daniel, people don't care. People, well,
I hate filing expenses.
Yeah. If my phone says, hey, where's the receipt for that? And I take a picture, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I need someone to nag me on certain things in life, and I'll gladly take that. So.
Oh my gosh.
Let's take a break. I got to take a break. We have more. You're going to have plenty of time to smash AI. We got lots more AI coming up, including Well, I don't want to tease. I'll let you stay tuned. We still haven't talked about TikTok, Kathy. We got a lot of talking to do.
Cybersecurity.
Senator Josh Hawley has proposed jail time for people who download DeepSeek. Not an insignificant amount of daytime. It's jail time. It's the Decoupling America's Artificial Intelligence Capabilities from China Act. DAAI. No, you could have done better, Josh. You could have done
in so many ways.
So many ways. You could be fined not more than $1 million and imprisoned for not more than 20 years.
Oh, well, how merciful of him.
No more than 20 years. Okay. Just for downloading DeepSeek, which I have done now on many of my devices. That's the Chinese AI that apparently Josh is very worried about. Great to have all. I wish this should be an 8-hour show. There is so much to talk about. Last night I said, "Oh, do I have enough stories?" And then I looked and I went, "Oh my God!"
Oh, you sweet summer child! What were you thinking?
Oh my God! Do we have enough stories? But we also want to get out of here in an hour because there's some football game going to happen a little later on. You're watching This Week in Tech with Lisa Schmeiser of NoJitter.com, Daniel Rubino, Windows Central, and our own personal attorney, Kathy Gellis from Tech Dirt. Good to have all of you. By the way, not just Tech Dirt, rstreet.org too, right? You wrote a nice piece for them. That was really good.
I'm a erstwhile fellow with them, and I wrote a white paper.
Yeah. I didn't realize you were a fellow there.
Yeah, partially. I don't know if I have a permanent title, but I did under the auspices of a fellowship. I wrote a white paper about jawboning and the DMCA.
By the way, apparently jawboning, whatever that is, has a little bit to do with the TikTok case as well.
Yep.
I read your article. We'll talk about it when we return. But first, a word from our sponsor. A sponsor I'm very proud to say I not only use, Steve Gibson uses, and we recommend heartily Bitwarden, the best password manager. Well, more than a password manager. They're a trusted leader in passwords, secrets, and passkey management. By the way, I love passkeys. I wish more sites used it. When it first came out, you had passkeys on your phone, you had passkeys on your computer. Now that Bitwarden supports passkeys, wherever you have Bitwarden, you have your passkeys. And that has been a big improvement in how passkeys works for me. Bitwarden now has 10 million users in 180 countries. This is an open source success story. Over 50,000 business customers too. In fact, they've entered 2025 as the essential security solution for businesses of all sizes, consistently ranked number one in user satisfaction by G2, recognized as a leader by Software Review's Data Quadrant. Bitwarden continues to protect businesses worldwide. One of the reasons I love Bitwarden, and I think it's because they're open source, they're always expanding their capabilities. They're always improving. Recently, they announced the general availability of their native mobile apps for iOS and Android. I did not realize this. I'd been using Bitwarden for years, but it wasn't a native app on iOS. I had no idea. And it's made a huge difference. You know, I guess it was an Electron app or a web view app. Key benefits of the native mobile app include on iOS and Android, faster load times, improved overall app functionality, iOS and Android platform-specific design, so it really, looks like it belongs on the platform. Much better hardware integration. In fact, that includes biometric authentication and multi-device support. So that's really enhanced usability. I love it when I can just do the Face ID in my Bitwarden and it's unlocked. They have strengthened their password manager now with SSH. This is a really important. So if you use SSH, as I do, and you use a key to log into SSH, you can now store your authorized SSH keys in Bitwarden. This is huge. Up to 90% of authorized SSH keys in large organizations just go unused because it's not convenient. Well, now this new update centralizes cryptographic key management, not just SSH, but in general, enabling secure storage, import. You can even generate your SSH keys directly within the Bitwarden vault, which is a huge improvement for developers and IT professionals. I'm thrilled. I mean, I used to have to do a whole bunch of command line foo. What sets Bitwarden apart is that they prioritize simplicity because they understand if a security tool isn't easy to use, isn't simple, people aren't going to use it, right? Bitwarden's setup only takes a few minutes. You can easily import from most password management solutions. And of course, because it's open source, that means Bitwarden source code can be inspected by anyone. They undergo regular or third-party audits, and very importantly, they publish the full report. So you can see everything going on within Bitwarden and be reassured that it is absolutely secure. Look, your business deserves a cost-effective solution for enhanced online security. See for yourself. Get started today with Bitwarden's free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user. Bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. And by the way, let me underscore this. Because they're open source, if you're an individual user, it's free and you get all the capabilities, unlimited passwords, unlimited devices, iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, Linux. You also get passkeys. You also get hardware security keys. All of that in a free version, free forever for life. And that's nice. Bitwarden.com/twit. All right, let's talk TikTok since that's still an ongoing thing, right?
I mean, we never resolved it. We just did something really stupid, and here we are.
So, just to fill you in,
This is the best.
previously on This Week in Tech, Kathy is a adamant supporter of the First Amendment, as we all should be, and says that TikTok is protected by the First Amendment. Not just TikTok itself, but every user of TikTok is exercising their right to free speech. There are many who say that or believe that TikTok is a security problem because it is a Chinese company with presumably gives access. In fact, we had an OpenAI guy on Wednesday on the show said nobody should have. I don't have TikTok on my phone. You'd be crazy to have TikTok on your phone or DeepSeek or any of these apps.
And I'm not disputing that. I don't have it either, and for similar reasons. So let's just, stipulate that TikTok is as much of a privacy menace as it's been accused. That notwithstanding, the question is, what does the government get to do about that? And I think the First Amendment says not this, but the Supreme Court disagreed, although they disagreed very narrowly.
But it was 9-0, right, Kathy? Were you surprised that it was unanimous?
I'm not exactly.
We should mention Kathy was in the court during the oral arguments. Yeah, and we had you on shortly after that. She's admitted to the Supreme Court, to the bar.
Yeah, so I wrote an amicus brief in the case arguing this is not how anything works. And I attended the oral argument listening to it. I was cautiously optimistic because it I think they kind of understood what the First Amendment issues were. But the whole thing was a mess.
It's even messier now.
It's even messier now. Mm-hmm. And so you ask about the 9-0, and I think the 9-0 is kind of a byproduct of they just wanted to get it off its docket for whatever reason. And one of the things that concerns me is I don't know why they thought they were unable to stop the clock on this and provide and join things and then have things being briefed at a proper pace when they could read all the briefs and get all the full argument and get all the amici to have time, not over their Christmas break, to be able to weigh in. So they ended up, because they didn't do that, they ended up with everything on a very accelerated schedule. And then we're kind of like, well, we heard the case, we got to do something. And I have a sense that the 9-0 decision that they came out with was the only thing they could kind of get everybody to agree on to get something out the door. So it's got a lot of framing to say, be really careful. We're only speaking to this particular situation as it applies to TikTok. Don't read too widely. We want to be cautious about not, hurting technology, this and the other thing. They kind of acknowledge that they might be wrong, but they were wrong and they made a mess. And the only thing that I think is somewhat good about it is I think they could have made a worse mess depending on what their reasoning was, but they made a pretty big mess anyway. Both legally in terms of how do we interpret First Amendment law going forward, but also in terms of what now happens to TikTok itself and all of its users. And that is a practical mess that has not been resolved, but basically it is unavailable in the United States and American users can't use it. But some of them are, they're doing.
Wait a minute. Didn't the president say we can?
He can't say that. It doesn't help. And
He did.
well, okay.
Oh, I got it on here. I think that's okay.
He is capable of saying many things. There are
Yeah, it
many
works just
words that
fine.
he is able to project from his mouth. But in terms of any sort of lawful beneficence that he is legally and constitutionally and lawfully allowed to bestow, no. And it doesn't solve the problem because, as you were alluding to, the whole TikTok ban is yet another example of jawboning. Because one of the things it does—
What is jawboning?
Jawboning is going after, instead of going after the actual speaker that you're unhappy with and trying to regulate, which you may not be able to do thanks to the First Amendment, it's to put pressure on an intermediary they depend on and make it so that that intermediary can't do business and support the actual speaker. So it's a way of hurting a speaker by sticking it to somebody in the middle. And that is basically what jawboning is. That's what they were complaining about had happened with the Biden administration, allegedly leaning on the platforms to delete some speech and delete some users. That whole bit of, if you didn't like it, you didn't go after those users. So because you couldn't, because that would be unlawful, unconstitutional. So instead you went after the platforms and told them to do it, and you constricted
And they did.
them.
Both Apple and Google have removed TikTok and all the other ByteDance apps, for that matter, from their stores. TikTok is now telling Android users you can sideload the app. You can't get it on a Mac, on an iPhone in any form or fashion.
Right. So the question is, so TikTok can't do stuff in the United States, but nobody in the United States can help TikTok do anything, including the app stores who had been providing it.
Couldn't Apple say, well, the president said it's okay, so we're going to put it back in the store?
I would not, if I'm their in-house counsel.
What's the risk?
At that everything, that there's no way he could actually make it so that it's lawful. The law,
which was upheld by the Supreme Court, has pretty substantial fines.
It has pretty substantial. He can't forgive them of those fines. He doesn't have that power.
But who's going to prosecute them?
You are playing a lot of Russian roulette if you basically rely on Trump's representation and the fact that you think that Pam Bondi is going to just sort of let you get away with it, and her representations. That may be true as a practical standpoint now, but it's a rather corrupt result. So shouldn't bet your business on it.
I understand why Apple and Google aren't, because why take the chance, right? There's no downside to not having it in the store. There's definitely a potential downside for having it in the store.
And it's not just Google. It's the app stores is the easiest target, but it also targets any other web host. So there's also the issue of the CDNs and stuff. Although I thought maybe one of them did come back online to help TikTok, but I think it's a really questionable move, and it was based on a promise that Trump had at least originally made.
I can go
he was
right
even
now
inaugurated.
to tiktok.com/download and download this. You have to do it on an Android device because it allows you to sideload. Apple iPhones do not. Presumably, there's a web host somewhere. I don't know if it's in China. There's a CDN probably as well. I don't know where it is.
Well, I think what kids today are doing is VPNing and trying to use to get it from Canada, but you have to. You don't have to. To do that, you have to go through a lot of hoops to be able to do it. But in theory, all of this is unlawful because it's not just the app stores, but also anybody who's involved with hosting also is running afoul of the law. And they also had to go down, even if they could rely on Trump's representation. He made the representation before he was technically president. So they were accruing potential liability.
Oh, come on. Now that's a technicality.
And, if his presidency doesn't last 4 years, you may be inside the statute of limitations. It's a bet the company decision on something that just really isn't worth it. But it also is reason why the law was jawboning and bad on that regard, because the way we decided to solve the problem of impinging on certain user speech is to, or even TikTok itself, like the people that we wanted to go after, we did it by going after middlemen to make it impossible, to just mess with the people that we were really going after.
So I just did a who is on TikTok. And it is, the registrar is Gandhi.net. It is on Akamai, is their CDN.
I think Akamai is playing chicken with law, but at this point, this is not the biggest kettle of fish for anybody to worry about.
I just don't think Pam Bondi is going to going to go
I don't
after
think
him.
you can rely on anything, and including, like, I think I made the argument in my TechDirt post to say, okay, let's look at what the math would be for how much you would potentially owe if you were found
it's
guilty of it.
outrageous. Yeah.
So in theory, they can extract enough money, just $1 less than that. And it's a huge amount of money. And just for this, and this is one law. What's the next law going to look like? That this idea that you could basically like hope for their benevolence when this is really extremely a corrupt offer to have been made, and the idea that, oh, we can rely on this and we'll be okay. It's not rational. And quite frankly, if I'm shareholders, I'm going to start wondering what these companies were thinking of. I don't think this level of decision making is cleared by the business judgment rule.
Daniel,
they're breaking the law.
Should Microsoft buy TikTok? By the way, they're one of the companies that's being mentioned. Microsoft, Oracle. Elon says, no, I don't want it. So but you never know with Elon. Concerns. He didn't want he didn't want Twitter either. So I don't know.
So I've joked about Microsoft buying them. Whether it's good or bad depends on your opinion of TikTok. If you like TikTok,
but you wouldn't get the algorithm. So that's part of the problem. Right. The Chinese government says the algorithm is not for sale, and apparently they control that. So you wouldn't get Microsoft you'd get the users though, and that's not in an insignificant
thing.
They're
going to be looking for something new. Yeah.
You're not getting
for training AI would be huge.
You're not getting the users.
No, you're not
the users. I mean, I want to write Speaking of the list of posts in my head, which have not actually been published on TechDirt yet because I have to finish writing them, I really think there's a question about how alienable a platform actually is, about how, when you sell it, how much can you sell? Because platforms are really not just a corporate asset. They are also, they are essentially the community, and the community is not ownable. And all those choices.
Yeah, but
jump off of Kathy's point, we don't have in 20 odd years of internet community aggregation and dissipation, social platforms rising and falling. We have no good example of any company successfully acquiring or monetizing a social network and having it remain half as useful.
Elon Musk bought Twitter and got all of the Twitter users.
Actually, for what she's saying.
Well, Daniel, I could argue though that LinkedIn, it's a social network in the capacity that people use it to network with each other to get jobs. But with something like MySpace or something like Twitter or something like TikTok, the value was in being part of what felt like a bigger community of affinity, or a bigger community of lifestyle, or a bigger community of social connection. And the shutdown and revival of TikTok has already rocked people, where they're like, oh, this isn't a tenable way to make a living. This isn't a tenable way to have a community. What have I been doing with my time? Like, the bubble has already burst, socially speaking. All of these people are going to be looking for new places to go.
And even if we accept LinkedIn as a rare counterexample, I would even say it's not a counterexample, because a lot of what LinkedIn has grown to be now maybe have been, while it's been a Microsoft property anyway, that we probably did see a dip, but to the extent that it's something interesting and viable now, it's interesting and viable under Microsoft stewardship. And if Microsoft divested and sold it to somebody else, we would see a shakeout and lose something really integral, not just in terms of what we can count on the platform operator to deliver, but that the community itself will be shattered and lose the value proposition for why they're there in the first place.
So what about WhatsApp and Instagram?
Instagram's
but they were both. Instagram.
Meta bought Instagram, and actually it grew. I think if Microsoft or some credible company bought TikTok, there's no reason people would leave TikTok.
Well, the reasons have already
people aren't building communities of affinity on Instagram the same way they were. It's a business channel now, which is fine. But
that's how it's been mismanaged by Meta.
Yeah.
I don't think that's because Meta bought them.
But that's always the risk.
The issue with TikTok is mostly about where they're storing the data, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole argument here, is that they want the data stored in the United States, so the U.S. has control over consumer data due to security reasons.
J.D. Vance has been put in charge of the acquisition or sale or whatever it is. Trump has talked about creating a sovereign wealth fund. The U.S. does not have
all
one.
of this is unlawful.
Saudi Arabia has
shouldn't
one.
be given the time of day. All these things.
Who's going to stop him?
Well, that's a separate problem. But assuming we still have any sort of constitutional order and functioning law.
We don't.
Well, I'm not willing to surrender that yet.
I'm not either. But what are you going to do about it?
we are going to look for what vectors of power we still have to exert over things, and just sort of saying, well, it sounds good. No, it's more than Zippo.
Are the federal marshals going to do it?
We have things like we still have the ability to protest. We still have the ability to put
That's all we've got.
Market
I don't
power.
think so. What happens if a court rules? If a court rules something and then President Trump says, "Yeah, no." AG Bondi, General Bondi, you going to do anything about it? No.
Well, then we say goodbye to the union, but we are not there yet. And I think there's a lot of people whose allyship they're counting on who are not going to necessarily go along with that, but we'll see. But one of the other things, so we have, we still have power as a people. We have power to protest. We also have state power. And then we also have, and so this was the other bits that I was writing on Tector, there is the ability. There are other avenues to, if we act soon and we start to impose, and there's vectors of doing this, legal liability on the people that Trump and Musk are counting on to do their bidding, they may see that it's not going to be worth their while, because if they have liability judgments against them, even if the federal courts can't enforce it themselves, those judgments are enforceable in states where they have assets. And that is a really critical leverage vector of power that we still have over these people. They can only take our country if they have enough people to make willing to help them do it. And if we act now, I think there's some avenues of attack that we can make it not worth the while of the people that they're depending on to do it.
So Congress has introduced something called, we had COSA, now we have COSMA.
Yes.
A law that this came out of committee. I don't know whether it has much chance of surviving Congress. I have a feeling it might in the current climate, preventing anybody under the age of 13 from using social media, just as it is in Australia, period. This also is applicable to a case that the Supreme Court just heard oral arguments about in the state of Texas, Free Speech Coalition versus Texas AG Paxton. Texas passed a law requiring the age gating of certain internet sites. Do you think, A, the Supreme Court will overturn that law, which would probably then make moot any attempt to block social media for people under 13?
Oh, is this the Texas law that you just had?
Yeah.
So one interesting thing is just the other day, they managed to get at the district court an injunction of yet another age gating law that came out of Texas that had been challenged by I think Net Choice was probably the plaintiff. It was, I think, the same lawyers. The thing that's at the Supreme Court right now is I do not like the level of comfort that too many of the justices seem to have about whether age gating was appropriate for internet. For the internet. But what Justice Sotomayor pointed out was that is not the issue before them. The issue before them was that when it went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Fifth Circuit used, I think, a rational basis test for it. Maybe it was intermediate scrutiny, but it was definitely not the level of scrutiny that attacks on First Amendment rights normally requires. And all we need the Supreme Court to do right now is say it was supposed to be strict scrutiny, go back Fifth Circuit, try again. Now you review the district court and use the right standard. Because
they didn't do that with TikTok.
They didn't do it so they sort of did it with TikTok, kind of. So what happened at the district court, at the appeals court in TikTok, which is where it started because Congress short-circuited the whole path and it began the challenge at the Court of Appeals, was that court said, yeah, First Amendment rights are implicated, and we will presume without deciding that strict scrutiny, the highest level, was appropriate to have to use to decide whether the ban was constitutional or not. But then allegedly using that standard, they then decided, yeah, it was totally fine, which basically guts the utility of this very strict standard, because very little should be able to leap over those obstacles.
I don't want to have people to have a law degree to understand the conversation, so we'll kind of hold it at that point. But something we've talked about quite a bit in the past with you, Kathy, and I think I'm starting to understand it. But these are legal niceties, and I don't know how much they have to do with what's happening in the political sphere.
But they
right
do
now.
have a lot. Because
Well, I understand, but I don't know if that's going to make any difference.
Because because the timing of when we all shrug and say, "Oh my gosh, we're screwed," there may be a point where that is true, but it is really important not to just shrug too soon and give up when we still have legal organs and legal principles that may still be operative. So the details do matter because they also matter for when and how and where, when and how to get upset and how to best apply that being upset.
I am not going marching
power.
downtown with a sign that says "Apply strict scrutiny."
I probably would, but I mean, that may not be the thing that is necessarily going to save it. Look, the TikTok thing is also from the aftermath of the end of the Biden administration, and now we are in kind of in a whole new world. So if you want to say, like, does the TikTok ban matter? I mean, so many other things have overtaken it where we have bigger fish to fry.
I agree.
But under the old fish market rules, the old fish market is they really made a mess of things. And that was a sort of mess that is why things like what we're seeing in now are more able to take root. But at least like we're able to talk to each other, organize, still have access to the internet to do these things because the First Amendment wasn't completely undermined when it came to internet speech. And so that's why like those details really matter, because if we were still living in the old fish market, I really want to hold the line to not make it too easy for the things the government wants to do to be too easy for it to do. Because if it can do them, then Trump legitimately can do them for us. Right now, he's doing them illegitimately. And that is really a significant difference in terms of what we're fighting for and what tools we have to do that fighting with.
The Senate Commerce Committee approved COSMA, the Kids Off Social Media Act, on Wednesday to ban children under 13 from social media. Lisa, you've got a young person in your home. Should kids be blocked from social media under 13?
The reason I'm hesitant to say blanket yes or blanket no is because I think it would be a disservice to any young person to block them, and as opposed to teaching them responsible use and modeling responsible use.
And who better than the parents to do that?
What I would
13 is an arbitrary number. A parent knows best what a kid can and cannot handle.
Also, you have to point out a lot of parents are not responsible social media users.
Whether that will work well or not, I don't know. But
one of the things I would point out is a lot of apps and services aimed explicitly at children are designed to boost engagement and addictive behavior.
And we banned advertising to children on children's TV shows. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff. I just remember
sitting in a briefing with the head. I was sitting in a session one time where the person who was then the head of the YouTube Kids app was happily chattering about how great it was that they had figured out a way to boost engagement so kids just kept clicking on videos and watching. And to them, this was a sign that the app was succeeding. Like, it didn't matter what was getting poured into the heads of the kids. It didn't matter that there's a clear trade-off. And if you're spending this much time online consuming other people's content, that's time away. Like, they were like, we've succeeded with this app.
I understand that, but I don't think government should get involved.
No, I do think, though, that you've posed an interesting question, which is if you have apps that are specifically designed to boost engagement independent of what's actually being consumed, is there a point where there should be regulation or there should be limits, the same way there were limits on advertising to kids or the content of children's cartoon programs?
But this is why when I'm getting to talk about strict scrutiny, it matters, because if you're going to speak in broad terms of is there a point, those levels of scrutiny help you figure out where constitutionally you can get to that point. Because sometimes things can survive strict scrutiny, where we have a compelling reason for the government to act, and they've narrowly tailored the way they're going to act so that it like best deals with the problem they're trying to solve and without collateral damage to the rest of the right. That's why strict scrutiny when it comes to the First Amendment and free speech principles is so important. And that's why I'm like apoplectic, as the word is, about what happened with TikTok, because at the DC circuit, they said they were using strict scrutiny, but they used something that was much, much lower. They're like, yeah, the government had a reason. I'm sure everything they did was fine. And they didn't look for any narrow tailoring. And then what they did at the Supreme Court is they used
they even said, we don't know what the reason is, but I'm sure it's a good one.
They did a little bit better defending it, but I don't want to give them that many props. And then what the Supreme Court did, which I think is both good and bad, is they still allowed it, but they used intermediate scrutiny. And I'm really concerned that they used the lesser standard, because I think the situation really called for the higher standard, but they didn't ruin the higher standard by doing what the DC the Court of Appeals had done, which was to use the very difficult standard and then just making it open season, in which case we don't have a really strict standard anymore.
COSMA, Kids Off Social Media Act, was sponsored by Ted Cruz and Hawaii's Brian Schatz, Democrat. And Schatz said, when you got Ted Cruz and myself in agreement on something, you pretty much captured the ideological spectrum of a whole Congress.
It's a sign that he should be rethinking what he's doing.
No, I'm afraid not.
I disagree.
I'm afraid not.
I honestly think this law should go into effect. If people want and it's going to help parents out, I don't see a problem with it. We have arbitrary laws for youth all the time. Youth can't view pornography. They can't buy cigarettes. They can't join the army. They can't drive a car. We have tons of these restrictions in place for youth. So
not just willy-nilly.
One of the things that I find really interesting, the feedback that I get from kids,
every law is willy-nilly.
The feedback I get from kids is that they're actually kind of relieved when teachers take their phones in school.
Yes.
And the feedback that my daughter and her friends had with TikTok ban was good. The people we know who are always on TikTok are super unhappy anyway. Maybe this gives them a chance to reset. It was really interesting to me that the proposed law seems to be more vibes rather than data, like, with Schatz and Cruz.
And that's not supposed to be how to run the railroad.
Yeah, it's more vibes, but data. But I would love to see some data that backs up when you have the people who are being targeted by the law going, yeah, get the phones out of my hands. I don't want them. I want an excuse not to have them in school. Find us the data that explains why the vibe.
It is there. We do have the data. We have the data that suggests that the negativity is maybe overstated. And we also have the data to suggest that there's a ton of positive. And so basically now we're looking at a season where we are about to lose our constitutional democracy, and everybody needs to be able to kind of come together and push back against it. And we're talking about taking away the tools to do it. I mean, that's lunacy. If we think this is a problem, if we think dictatorship is bad, why would we make it that the dictator can lawfully suppress the ability of the people to come together and speak out against it? And that's
even if you're under 13?
Well, it isn't about under 13s. It's about 13 to 18. So you actually are dealing with people who are growing into adults, very imminently adults. There's no gradation between the ages. And at 13 are world aware enough to be able to start to make decisions both about their own well-being and also the world that they're living in.
Australia's law is 16 and under, and it goes into effect later this year. I'll be very interested to see what happens there.
Australia does not have a First Amendment or any equivalent, so a lot more can happen.
Do they have strict scrutiny?
No, they don't even have an embodied right of free speech.
They have wallabies, though.
They have wallabies.
What's with the First Amendment here, though? Like, I don't understand. Is it we're talking about First Amendment for the corporations, or because as a 14-year-old, I'm not sure. What right do you have?
14-year-olds have First Amendment rights. This is not new ground to travel.
But to post to Instagram,
potentially, like
that's
you
speech.
have to
I don't
be
see
able
that
to
argument.
say,
isn't that speech?
It is speech. It's expression. And the idea that youth don't have the rights of free expression, that has never been.
Does Instagram have right to moderate that free speech then?
There's also First Amendment rights to moderate that speech. That the platforms also
at the end of the day, though, their speech is moderated, which is not protecting their.
It's moderated by private parties. That is not
That's the difference, not by the government.
Right. The First Amendment speaks to the government cannot come in and decide what speech is good and what speech is bad. But a private party, like I just had to delete a troll on my Facebook page. Like I get to do that.
I have the right to cut your mic.
You absolutely do.
But it's my right.
But
President Trump cannot come in here and say, cut her mic.
Right.
That would be that's against the Constitution of the United States, such as it is.
Currently, yes.
If you can keep it.
You are allowed to card me, but he's not allowed to come in and card me. And he's not allowed to say, if he's carded me, that,
Is Elon Musk allowed to come in here?
Now, there's a really interesting thing about whether he has now merged himself in a way that he is a state actor. So, no, he wouldn't.
I hope he's a state actor, because if he's not, how come he has access to our private information in the Treasury Department and the OPM? And I hope he's a state actor. You think he's not a state actor?
I don't know if I necessarily want him to be a state actor. I don't know if he necessarily is, but even if he's a state actor, he's not state actor enough.
If he's not, then he's in violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, as you point out.
I have been touting that as a legal theory. And one of the reasons why I've been pushing it is because we talked about how I don't want everybody to shrug and give up too soon, because we do have leverages of power. And one of the leverages of power is if we can impose civil liability and get money damages from any of the people who are helping with this nonsense, that are then enforceable, not in federal court, but it's state courts, including blue states where they may have assets, that can scare the crap out of them, hopefully enough that they back off.
Hold this thought, because I do want to talk about Doge in just a minute. We got to take a break.
Oh, do we have to?
Not for long. You can exercise your free speech rights just a little bit. We don't have to. We could skip right over it. I feel like there is a tech angle a little bit.
Oh, a huge tech angle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll stick with that part. We won't talk politics so much. Kathy Gellis is here. She is an impassioned advocate of strict scrutiny. Okay.
For fundamental rights like free speech.
Yeah, no. And so as I understand it now, strict scrutiny really is, you have the First Amendment rights, but there are some things that might curtail those rights.
Right.
And it seems sensible that should be a very high bar, right?
Exactly.
And that's all you're saying. Strict scrutiny is the highest possible bar before you take away somebody's free speech rights.
Right. Because we don't want to just say, oh, well, it was kind of where the discussion was going. Well, we've made exceptions for advertisement length and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like the fact that we have made exceptions doesn't mean we just get to always ignore it. What it means is that we looked at each exception and kind of quizzed it for what is the reason and is it narrowly tailored enough? And then based on what the answers to those questions were, decided whether, nope, unconstitutional, you don't get to do it, or okay, fine, we will make this very, very, very narrow exception. But just because we made an exception once doesn't mean that we always get to make exceptions. Yeah. They all have to be tested.
I think that's a very good way to put it. Thank you, Kathy. Also here, Daniel Rubino, who thinks kids are stupid and should be off social media right away. Do you have kids, Daniel?
Hell no. Avoiding that whole mess.
Editor-in-chief, smart man. Editor-in-chief, Windows Central. Your argument, completely credible. This is why this is so tough, this stuff. It is not an easy thing to understand or act upon. And that's why we chew it out here. That's the whole point of this. Lisa Schmeiser is also here from NoJitter.com. I had a little jitter in my no jitter. Little jitter, just because of this kombucha, it really causes jitter. I have to stop on the kombucha. Our show today brought to you by, I'm very happy to say, ExpressVPN. Have you ever browsed in incognito mode? Probably not as incognito as you might think. In fact, Google even admitted it. They just settled a $5 billion lawsuit after being accused of secretly tracking users in incognito mode. Google's defense? Oh, incognito doesn't mean invisible. Well, in fact, all your online activity is still 100% visible to third parties unless you use ExpressVPN, the only VPN I use. I trust. You better believe when I go online, especially when I'm traveling, in airports, coffee shops, in other countries, ExpressVPN's my go-to. Why does everyone need ExpressVPN? Well, without ExpressVPN, third parties can still see every website you visit, even in incognito mode. That means your ISP, your mobile network provider, the admin of that Wi-Fi network you've discovered. Why is ExpressVPN the best? Because it hides your IP address, rerouting 100% of your traffic through secure, encrypted servers. easy to use. Just fire up the app, click one button to get protected. It works on all devices, iPhones, Android phones, laptops, tablets, and more, so you can stay private on the go. And it's rated #1 by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. Protect your online privacy today. Visit expressvpn.com/twit. That's EXPRESS VPN.com/twit. You get an extra 4 months free when you buy a 2-year package. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank him so much for supporting this show, this contentious program. Actually, it's really good. I hate it when a show, everybody's just kind of, yeah, well, whatever. I think it's really important to fight for these issues. We really have a fight on our hands right now. And we need to kind of think about it and talk about it. I have a little concern about the young people Elon is putting in our government institutions. Now, some of them are really geniuses. There's one of the Doge interns is the kid who decoded those scrolls. Remember, there were it was the $700,000 Vesuvius challenge, ancient scrolls that had been buried in volcanic dust, the Herculaneum scrolls, and he used AI and scanning technique to actually read those. I mean, that's a pretty smart kid, 23-year-old Luke Ferreter. So there's a guy, smart guy, but some of the team is not maybe the best in the world. One of the Doge teens is a former, this is from Krebs on Security, former denizen, that's a loaded word, of the Calm, which is an archipelago of Discord and Telegram chat channels, Brian Krebs writes, that function as a kind of distributed cyber criminal social network. And in fact, there's some evidence that this kid, Edward Korestein, who is, maybe you've seen him in the news as Big Balls, he founded, when he was 16 years old, Tesla.sexy LLC, which controls dozens of web domains, including at least 2 Russian registered domains. One of those domains, which is still active, offers a service. This is the kid who's in the Treasury Department right now. Offers a service called Healthy, which is an AI bot for Discord servers targeting the Russian market. It's something that would have come up in a security clearance review, but of course there are no security clearance reviews for the Doge kids. He also, someone using a Telegram handle tied to him, solicited a DDoS for hire service in 2022. And he worked for a short time, got fired from, as it turns out, a company that specializes in protecting companies from DDoS attacks. But this company, Packetware, or Diamond CDN, was actually full of former hackers, DDoS, in fact, experts, because they had set up quite a few DDoS operations. Korestein's LinkedIn profile said he worked at an anti-DDoS company called Path Networks. Wired, you might have read the Wired article, described it as a network monitoring firm known for hiring reformed black hat hackers. Anyway, it goes on and on. I recommend reading the Krebs article because there's a lot of stuff that would be at very least cause for concern.
All of it. I think there's nothing that should be, if the fact that they didn't maybe smash everything is no relief. The entire incursion and the mode and the method that the incursion was made, if not outright unlawful, was at least unwise. And I think unlawful because we have obsessed about keeping our most sensitive systems as protected as possible. We've passed laws that tried to punish incursions into them that were unauthorized. And what we have basically done is handed the kings to the kingdom of our most, sensitive systems and our most sensitive data, and we've handed it to people who did not have appropriate authorization in the way the law requires. That is bad. That is a problem. It has caused harm, and we just don't necessarily know yet the full measure of that harm, but we know it's accrued, and we know it's accruing.
To add to that, we had heard that the fork in the road resignation emails would not apply to CISA staffers. In fact, it did. Mm-hmm. And this is CISA, of course, very important part of the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Initially excluded from those fork in the road deferred resignation offers. However, on Wednesday, some CISA staffers were given the offer. That gives them 1 day to decide, by the way, just hours, in fact, to decide whether to accept it. This is according to 3 sources who spoke to NPR on condition of anonymity. CISA, I think everybody who listens to us knows, is extremely important to national security. And perhaps a problem for those Doge staffers who've been entering the State Department, the Treasury Department, OPM, USAID.
Now they're GSA and NIH, and I think their sights are set on basically everything.
Yeah, I mean...
So remember that the Doge, no one associated with Doge has any loyalty to national security whatsoever. They're not operating in the interest of the country. They're operating in the interest of the whims of Elon Musk. Exactly. And what he's doing is the same thing that was extensively documented in the excellent Ryan Mack, Katie Conger book, Character Limit, where they talked about how when he took over Twitter, the primary driving force behind everything he did was to reduce, to eliminate, to get rid of things and call it change and call it transformation, when instead all it was just breaking things with no understanding of what he was breaking and no consequence. That's what's happening here too. And we can talk about the kid who decoded the scrolls, but just because you happen to be very good at one specific data problem doesn't make you smart and solving a question that shouldn't have to be asked, which is how can we eliminate entire departments of the government?
Yeah, exactly. And the loyalties matter. I mean, what's ridiculous is we just got through banning TikTok by bending the Constitution possibly to a breaking point because we were worried about national security and China slurping its data. And so then when we just went and handed all of the data
to a gang of teenage Nazis. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So
now we have people in our chat room who say they're acting in our best interest despite your disapproval. They say it's nothing scares Democrats more than full transparency.
We don't have the transparency.
And I don't think
what about this has been transparent? Exactly what in any part of this decision process has been transparent? Also, it's a fairly rich allegation to make when I spent the entire show screaming about AI and. The government's not wasteful, though. If you take a look at the one part of the government that consistently fails audit is the Department of Defense. That's where your waste is. That's where the lack of transparency is. I don't see Doge sweeping through there. They're going after places that are teeny tiny percentages of the U.S.
I disagree and push back.
First of all, but I would stipulate the government can be wasteful and has been wasteful, and undoubtedly there are government programs that are pork, that are boondoggles that Congress put in there to benefit their constituency.
But they are.
But there's a legal way. There's a legal way to go through these, and there's an illegal way to go through these.
This is what happens when you have 40 years of Democrats, Republicans exploiting government, growing the federal government, despite the fact Republicans forever were like against federalism, against large government. And then they got into power, of course, and they spent like crazy as well and continue to grow. And we grew these institutions and we grew these bureaucracies. And the number one job of a bureaucracy is to protect itself. It's to make sure it's still needed.
Are you in favor of this? Is this a good way to cut the fat?
I'm in favor of it theoretically. Like this idea of going through and cleaning out and getting rid of a lot of stuff in the government and just being super aggressive, I'm for it. The way they're doing it now, no, I'm not. The way that I don't care for Elon Musk, I don't trust him. I feel like a lot of the things that they're going after are self-serving, and I'm really worried about
firing the director of the FAA, for instance, because he was the one who stopped SpaceX's launches because they were unsafe.
Congress's job is the problem. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the issue here is one thing I learned, I majored in political science many years ago, but you study the French Revolution. The problem is whenever you have a system going to one extreme for a very long time, is there's always a counter revolution to it, which is often just as extreme and negative. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, the reign of terror was not a great improvement over Louis the 16th.
It was about freedom. It was about freedom, right? But
I wouldn't stipulate to that pretense that that's been what's going on here. Even if Congress was wrong, its job is to raise money and decide where it gets spent. And that's supposed to happen until we decide to elect different members of Congress.
Right.
We didn't,
100%.
We did that slightly, but we didn't do that very much. But that's only the part thing, because you're talking about, we've overspent, but we're also looking at Keynesian economics, which talk about that what we spend also has beneficial effects on the economy. And the real question really needs to be whether, in terms of when we evaluate whether we're overspending or not, is whether we're getting value for the money. And all of these programs that they're deciding are waste and want to gut are things where we're spending this money and it's producing value to America's own interests. I mean, even if you just do it with how much we spend on, we pay American farmers for their rice so that we can feed hungry people around the world, which not only gives money to the farmers, but also makes sure that we don't have starving people and people like America a little bit more. So the only question if it's waste is, are we spending money and getting no value out of it? But we're clearly spending the money and getting value out of it. So the whole idea of reviewing...
Right, I don't want to debate that because honestly, now this is political. So let's go back to the technology. Okay. Monday morning, Thomas Shedd, who was appointed Technology Transformation Services Director, an ally of Elon Musk, told GSA workers that the agency's new administrator is pursuing an AI-first strategy. AI, he wants. It's not a question of AI coming in and finding where the fat is. It's actually AI running the agency. The GSA, the Government Services Agency, what does it do? It does a lot. In what he described as an AI-first strategy, sources say Shedd provided a handful of examples of projects the GSA acting administrator is looking to prioritize, including the development of AI coding agents that would be available for all agencies. GSA provides government services, right? He made it clear that he believes much of the work at TTS and the broader government, particularly around finance tasks, could be automated. Automate the accounting. A cybersecurity expert told Wired on Monday, this raises red flags. Automating the government's not the same as, self-driving cars. People, especially people who aren't experts in the subject domain, coming into projects often think this is dumb and then find out how hard the thing is, really. Honestly, I wouldn't let a Tesla drive me around. I definitely don't want a self-driving government.
No, I mean, we're government by the people, for the people. And we had systems for how it was supposed to work. And we have systems for how to change it if we don't like the way it's working. And none of them are this. This is something else. This is a lot of power that was usurped by people who don't have the authority to usurp as much power if they've helped themselves.
Can the president give them that authority?
No. I think the answer is no. There are statutes that constrain his power, plus the text of the Constitution itself, which tells him that his job is to enforce the law, not to ignore it. Between the constitutional text and the law that's actually been written that prescribes how he can use his power, he doesn't have the power to say, yeah, you guys are fine, go do whatever you want, because there are laws that say that's not how it works, because the Congress, representing the people, is supposed to be able to observe and keep track of what's going on and make sure that the power is being wielded in ways that the people approve of. And
it is concerning that this is happening invisibly.
It's happening invisibly.
Without any transparency or
without any
scrutiny.
transparency, because that's what the allegations that Doge is illegal is, that there were rules about if you wanted to empower certain people to do certain things, there were rules that had to be followed, manifested in different laws about which people and how do you empower them and what boxes do you have to check. And it wasn't just bureaucracy. It was to make sure that there would be that supervisory capacity to figure out how power was getting wielded. And none of what Doge is empowered to do complied with any of those rules. And that matters for what I wrote about on Tech Dirt, which gets back into the technical, which is I think that the authority that the Doge brothers have wielded in these systems potentially makes them personally liable for Computer Fraud and Abuse Act violations, because I think it is inherently without authorization that they've been in there and demanded that access. And because the power that was given to them was not lawfully given to them, in which case they're there like any other wrongful hacker would be there. They just happen to have gone through the front door. And if that is true.
The problem with all this, though, is it's perception. There's a reason why people aren't in the streets protesting all this right now. It's because no one likes the federal government. And a lot of people don't believe it works for them. And this is a perception messaging issue, right? Because people aren't upset that a lot of these institutions are being undermined, destroyed. Granted, we haven't seen the ramifications of it, which I think could be definitely
they might have a different opinion when FEMA doesn't come to bail them out after the next year.
Right, especially for the people who are for the people who are at the lower rungs of society, I think will be mostly affected. But the reason why this stuff is happening is because Democrats have not done anything the last 20 years to help stem government, make it more efficient, bring it down in size. There's a lot of talk, and
people kept electing Democrats. And the thing is, they were in the street. There was a protest in front of Treasury that took place in the street. There's been a lot of protests. And with Congress trying to get in the door and being shut out of a building that Congress funds, to shut out the officials that we've duly elected to run our country and not be allowed to be in the building that they fund. Like that is a problem there. And you have people on the street, and
Daniel has a point. No, there hasn't been a huge outcry about this. There's been
we're working on
protests, but I think Daniel makes a really good point where there's a public perception that the Democrats are the problem because they made this government that's not working. So, thank God there's change.
Right. Any change would be better than
people
what we've
just want action.
Kind of.
But, it goes back to the whole thing in Character Limit where Elon Musk is like, look at me, I'm changing Twitter. You are, but you're not improving it. You're just taking things away and then claiming that that's an improvement. Those are two completely different things.
I do not like Trump, okay? But
no
since his second term in office here, he's done a lot. Now,
it's been very busy.
We can say, I'm not saying that's not a judgmental call, whether it's good or bad, but he's creating action. And for a lot of Americans, they've just seen, no matter who we've elected year after year, it's always the same. They don't see change in their lives. And I think that's what people are voting for or wanting to see. Now, whether it's going to happen, it's going to benefit them, I'm, real skeptical of that, right? I think this could be going a lot of bad directions, but that's why people are going
I
along
completely agree with you. There's a complete dissatisfaction with government and a sense of helplessness. And it's pretty universal. I don't blame the Democrats, by the way.
There were a lot of elections.
Ronald Reagan started it by saying the worst, scariest words in the English language are, I'm the government, we're here to help, which is a funny and probably popular thing to say. But I got to tell you, if Hurricane Helene devastated your community and FEMA came to help feed you and get you housed, that is help. And
same issue.
You're right, Daniel. I understand completely dissatisfaction, and I think you're exactly right. I also think I fear the consequences. We'll find out. We're going to find out. We're going to get to see. We're going to take a break. Enough of that. We have other things to talk about, including Xbox sales. What the hell, man? I threw that in for you, Daniel. You're watching This Week in Tech. Alicia Schmeiser, Daniel Rubino, Kathy Gellis. Great to have all three of you. This has been an excellent conversation, and I think a very important one, too. Our show today brought to you by NetSuite, name you probably know well. What does the future hold? I mean, we're just talking about it, especially if you're in business. Ask 9 experts, you're going to get 10 answers. Rates are going to rise. Oh, no, wait a minute. Maybe rates are going to fall. Oh, inflation's up. Oh, no, inflation's down. Can someone please invent a crystal ball? Until then, Over 41,000 businesses have future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP. It brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. And with real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. It is a crystal ball. When you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending less time looking backward, more time on what's next. Whether your company's earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. If I had needed this product, it's what I'd use. Oh, speaking of opportunities, you can download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning. Now, this is something you need, and it's free at netsuite.com/twit. NETSUITE, netsuite.com/twit. Get the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning. This is something we all need to understand better at netsuite.com/twit. Thank you, NetSuite, for supporting the show. And thank you, dear listener, dear viewer, for supporting us by going to that address, netsuite.com/twit. A hearty thank you, too, to all of our Club Twit members who make this show and all the shows we do possible. Yeah, we have ads, but ads don't cover all the costs. And that's where Club Twit really makes a big difference. We're so glad to have 12,000 plus members. It's only $7 a month. The reason they're members, you get ad-free versions of all the shows. You're giving us money. We don't have to show you ads. You wouldn't even see this little moment of begging. You also get special programming that we don't do anywhere else. We had a great Chris Marquardt photo segment last week on Thursday, and that's on the Twit Plus feed, available to club members. We've got other events coming up. Micah's Crafting Corner, Stacy's Book Club. I think it's a great way to join a fantastic community. And don't forget the Discord, place you can hang out with all the other Club Twit members. It really is a good place for conversation, even when the shows aren't on, about all of the things geeks are interested in. If you're interested, I hope you are. It makes a big difference to us. It keeps the shows flowing. It keeps our staff paid, keeps the lights on. twit.tv/clubtwit. And thank you in advance. Because of our club members, we're able to stream our live shows on 8 different platforms now in the Club Twit Discord, YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, TikTok, X, Facebook, and Kick. And I'm missing one. Did I say TikTok? Did I say X? Yeah, everywhere. So watch the shows live if you want. This show is Sunday afternoon, usually 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific. We started a little early today because of the Super Bowl. That's 5 to 8 p.m. Eastern. That's 2200 UTC. If you want to watch live, of course, you don't have to. You can always download a copy of the show. Crypto, huh?
Did you say Kick?
Yeah, Kick.
You guys streamed?
Where all the Nazis are. So
I haven't heard I remember Kick from like 2012.
Kick's still around.
That's funny.
Let me see if I can get it right. Discord, YouTube, Twitch. I think I left out Twitch. Mm-hmm. TikTok, X.com, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Kick. Yeah, there's the 8.
Wow.
We basically stream anywhere that allows us to connect our pipe to their stream. Because we see the chat. I see the chat from all the different places. We don't get a lot of people from Kick saying hi in the chat, but I see a lot of people from YouTube. It's great. How many, Benito, do we know how many people are watching right now? Is there a figure? 1,249 people, it looks like, on those 8 platforms. So the vast majority of the audience doesn't watch live, but if you want to, it's nice. I like the interaction. It's very useful. Speaking of X, German civil activists have won a victory against Elon Musk's X. They sued, saying, we want information so we can track the spread of election-swaying information on the network. This is an urgent filing because Germany has a national election February 23rd. And as you know, Elon has kind of weighed in on the election in favor of the far-right ADF party. Berlin District Court said you've got to give civil rights groups the information the data so they can track misinformation and disinformation. X did not want to do that. And if they continue to not help, I don't know what's going to happen. They have to pay $6,200. That can't be right. Please tell me that's not right. I think that's just the court costs. There is one court case that has gone away. President Trump has ended his legal challenge over his ban on Twitter after January 6th. This was a long-running legal fight. The notice was released late Friday. Doesn't say how the case was resolved. My guess is it was just one of those handshake deals. Trump's lawyer declined to comment. X has declined to comment. It's over.
The one from Facebook also went away with that $25 million.
Yeah, wasn't that something?
I don't.
That's an expensive dinner at Mar-a-Lago that Mark Zuckerberg had there.
I don't think that the business judgment rule protects Zuckerberg from shareholder action for that. And it's a stretch of an argument, maybe, but I think it will be really interesting to see if somebody tries. That seemed to be, it was a winnable case by Facebook. And they would have spent vastly less money.
So was the CBS case.
So was the CBS case.
So was, there have been
CBS wants the benevolent overlord to bless their merger.
That's what it is. Yeah. So does Elon.
It's all money.
Yeah, but
so does Mark. So does Zuckerberg. This is because you have a strong executive.
It's not
to
a
say
strong
the least.
executive. That is not the word to use. That is a lawless executive, and that is the word.
You have scary. How about a scary executive? And
then you fight.
If you're a business,
because if you surrender, you will be paying. It will not just be the 25 million. It will be 25 million and 25 million and 25 million, and then that's going to come right out of shareholders' profits and pockets.
Yeah. Well, the shareholders get to stand up if they want.
I hope they do.
Crypto stealing apps have been found in the Apple App Store. This is the very first time. There have been malware in Apple apps in the past. Android and iOS apps contain a malicious software development kit designed to steal cryptocurrency wallet recovery phases. Let me say that again because it came out wrong completely. Cryptocurrency wallet recovery phrases. That made a lot more sense. It's an OCR stealer. So the whole idea is you pop up your wallet and it's looking at the screen and it's stealing your recovery key. Here's the scary part. The infected apps were downloaded more than 250,000 times on Google Play. Unfortunately, we don't have numbers for Apple's App Store, but I imagine it's a similar number. Anyway, sometimes this stuff sneaks through, right? We will learn this week, I think, if Apple's going to release a new iPhone SE. That's probably going to happen this week, according to Mark Gurman, the rumor guru at Bloomberg. Okay, no, nothing to say there. This is very popular, I think.
I thought that was walked back.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, it was just a rumor. Apple never pre-announces anything. So maybe Apple said it's not going to happen, or did Gurman walk it back? There are telltale signs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There are telltale signs. A spokesperson for Apple declined to comment.
Yeah.
Oh, if it was walked back, then I'm sorry. I was getting all excited. And here's a nice little apology from an iOS engineer who leaked information about coming products to the Wall Street Journal, and the information he was compelled. They settled with Apple. He's of course not working there anymore, and apparently was compelled to post the following apology on X. I spent nearly 8 years as a software engineer at Apple. During that time, I was given access to sensitive internal Apple information, including what were then unreleased products and features. But instead of keeping this information secret, I made the mistake of sharing this information with journalists who covered the company. I didn't realize at the time, but it turned out to be a profound and expensive mistake. Hundreds of professional relationships I'd spent years building were ruined, and my otherwise successful career as a software engineer was derailed, and it will likely be very difficult to rebuild it. Kids, leaking was not worth it. I sincerely apologize. I added the kids, okay? I sincerely apologize to my former colleagues who not only worked tirelessly on projects for Apple, but worked hard to keep them secret. They deserve better. I have to say that I'm just going to say to you, blink twice if you're being held hostage. And clearly, this
lesson
was part of the
learned
settlement.
is you just have to be better at leaking
Yeah,
material.
don't get caught.
Yeah.
Don't get caught.
Well, I do. I mean, you're journalists, at least Lisa and Daniel. You are. I guess you are too, Kathy. I don't know if you take tips or leaks.
I don't,
Why do
and I don't
people
want to be in
leak?
that position.
Yeah, I don't. You know what? I occasionally will get an offer, and I always turn it down because I don't.
I will
We
defend
exclusively leak
journalists' ability to promise anonymity. But
yeah, well, of course they're immune. Daniel, you said you depend on leaks.
Oh yeah. Well, we've exclusively been doing leaks for over a decade now. I mean, that's how I kind of cut my teeth in this industry. I used to leak Nokia stuff all the time and things for Windows Phone back in the day.
It's the right of consumers to know, right? I understand why companies don't want them to know. But if you're about to buy a phone and you find out that Tuesday Apple's going to release an iPhone SE, for instance, that's a benefit to you, and then you have the right to know that. Why do people leak to you, though, Daniel? Why does somebody at the company, given the risk, why do they
there's
leak?
a couple reasons. There's one reason is simply that employee is unhappy with decisions that have been made maybe for a product and thinks it should go another way, right? So they're leaking as a dissatisfaction because they know others will be upset about this, and they're hoping that the blowback kind of influences decision making. The other one, of course, is sometimes there are internal conflicts on a topic within a company on a product or a project. And so one group is trying to sort of get favoritism, right? So if something gets leaked and people are like, that's awesome, they should totally do that. They can literally go like back to a meeting, and we know this happens, and they'll cite an article of ours and read the comments, and people are like, look, people actually do really want this, right? So you help shaping the narrative there. Sometimes there are controlled leaks. You never really know about these, right? But
I think a lot of times Apple goes to the Wall Street Journal, for instance, and says, don't tell anybody I said this, but... And
they want to
because
control
that
the narrative.
They control the narrative. Exactly. Yeah.
And some people do it because they think it's what they do is cool and they want to share it with other people. It's just literally that, right? They know. I've met a lot of people. They're just super fans of the products that they work on, and they're excited about them, and they kind of want to get momentum going. A lot of times it works in our favor. Like we reported in 2018 that Microsoft and its partners are going to start working on dual screen and foldable laptops and PCs. And it happened. It was many years later, of course. But we helped start shaping that narrative for them by getting that info out there so that when it happened, it wasn't even like people were starting to get prepared for this idea of like, there will be these devices, right? So there are benefits to this leaking stuff. But I totally understand why. Like I can tell you for a fact, the Surface division absolutely hated us for leaking. I've had personal calls from Microsoft over them, and they are absolutely not happy. Xbox and the gaming teams, way cooler though.
Oh.
They're not.
They're just happy anybody's interested.
Right. Yeah. So you have different groups that are also, like I said, Panos Panay he's good at what he does, but he absolutely does not like or appreciate leaking stuff to the media at all.
He very famously it was doing a Microsoft Surface event, and Paul Thurrott tells a story. He came up to Paul and took his laptop and started to use it. You probably were there.
Yeah. He's a great guy. He's
a fascinating guy. I'm not crazy about how pumped he is about everything. I mean, he's a little bit
very
passionate. Weird. Yeah.
It's I've always told people I've had a personal. When he does those presentations on stage, I've had a personal one of that. It was for, I believe, Surface Pro 7. It was just me, him, and like 12 other PR and handlers in a room.
Weird.
And he personally gave me the whole like Panos experience, and it was awesome. But he's just very passionate about the stuff.
So it's genuine.
Works on.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And whenever you talk to him, he's one of the most sincere people I've ever met. Like, and like talking to him, it's almost like it's intense, but like but it's all in a good way, right? It's just someone who's really enjoys his job. I mean, we've reported that one of the reasons why he left Microsoft was because they want to get rid of the Surface Duo and the Neo projects, which were his passion. It was the number one thing he was actually really, really enthused about working on. And they said, no, you can't do those. So he's like, well, if I can't do what I want, then I'm going to leave.
The Duo was the phone, right? That had the dual screen, the hinged dual screen. I bought one. I thought it was really interesting, but they
had
never
a ton of potential.
Yeah, and they completely lost the thread on that. And the Neo never got released.
Right. Yeah.
Another dual screen, right? Was it another dual screen?
Yes, that was another dual screen PC. And with the phone, they were going to go to a single screen foldable. They're like, that was the third iteration they were going to do. And they were improving dramatically. Like, had they got to a third one, they would have been in a place where I think they would have been in a much better position. But like all things Microsoft, they have brilliant ideas that get cut off way too early, and they don't allow them to mature, And so a lot of times they're so far ahead of things that they cut them back, and then they miss the opportunity. And that's the story of mobile for them, period.
Yeah. It's really interesting how Microsoft's just fumbled mobile when it has turned out to be probably the most important part of computing, right? People don't buy PCs anymore. They don't buy laptops even. They've got a phone.
Although you could argue that smartphones themselves, the market has flattened too, right? Because everybody has one.
Yeah, but it's flattened at 2.25 billion units.
Yeah. No, but laptops and PCs.
It ain't too bad.
Laptops and PCs still do extremely well because they're extremely critical to everyday tasks. But these both are now flat markets. We're not expecting necessarily, although I would say growth for PC market 2025 will be a thing just to refresh cycles for corporations and enterprise. So.
That's interesting. We talk about this a lot on Windows Weekly, and it was a very kind of anemic growth in the PC market this quarter. It really is Paul's theory that it's just people aren't buying businesses have to still refresh every 5 to 7
we're coming
years.
on the 5-year cycle from the pandemic boost, boom, which was huge. Windows 10 is expiring, right? So if you're a consumer, not necessarily a big deal. If you're an enterprise, it's a really big deal, and you can't upgrade a lot of your computers to Windows 11. So you have those two things, and then the more dubious, but I would say still critical AI PC aspect with NPUs being more critical to these computers. For enterprise, again, more of a big deal. So I think you'll start to see this stuff. You'll see growth in 2025. It won't be huge, but they are expecting, all the companies I talked to, positive growth in 2025 and 26.
Sometimes it's not a leak. It's a partner that accidentally reveals things. In this case, Take-Two, the game publisher,
Nintendo,
kind of revealed a little something about Xbox sales, right? Microsoft doesn't report Xbox sales. They stopped reporting that 9 years ago, which tells you a little bit something there. Take-Two in their Q3 earnings report said 94 million consoles from the current generation, not including the Switch, are estimated to have been sold as of November. Since Sony has announced that it shipped 65.5 million PlayStation 5, it would probably mean that the Xbox has sold, 28 million, about a third that number. Is that a surprise? Not really, right?
No. And Microsoft reported 29% revenue decline in hardware for
Yikes.
Gaming.
They've been doing an ad campaign lately saying Xbox is everywhere, implying that you don't need the console. You could use it on your phone, your laptop, a tablet.
Right. Cloud gaming for them and the Game Pass grew 2%, and they are seeing a lot of growth in cloud gaming, which is really kind of, Microsoft's strategy for gaming, I would say, is more focused on studios, right? They have Call of Duty now, which has done huge. So they're doing very well with its publishing arm for gaming due to the Blizzard acquisition. Their Game Pass is doing very well too, which isn't just Xbox, because you can get it with PC gaming, which still continues to grow. And then you have handheld gaming, which is still very small, but it is definitely growing. We've seen a lot of creation of new handheld gaming systems this year. So there's still a lot of momentum here. Consoles themselves, though, are kind of, we're pretty old right now, old in quotes, but a couple of years into the consoles for this generation.
Will there be another Xbox console, you think?
I think there will be, but I think it's going to, it might be conceptually a bit different in terms of what they're doing with hardware. I think they started this back with the Series X this idea of merging or moving closer towards the PC model for console. I think they really want to have Xbox not be as distinct from PC gaming as it has been historically, which would save them money in the bottom line. But they're trying to do what's called like play anywhere. This idea of like a game is coded for both Xbox as a console, but also PC. If you buy it once, you can play on both systems. So I think that's really going to be their value. I think console gaming it'll always be there, but it's always been razor thin margins on the hardware end, right? It's always been about the game licensing and selling the games. That's really been the where you make money on consoles.
Hi, this is Benito. There's also always Nintendo. Nintendo will always make consoles.
Sure.
And then they're going to make a new Switch. The new Switch will be coming out in a month or two. And I'll probably buy it.
Because they just ride on their IP, right? Their IP is just legendary.
Who doesn't want to play Final Fantasy? Or in my case, Animal Crossings.
I want to play the Atari 800 I have sitting in a closet.
You have one? I'll buy it from you.
Oh, I grew up with one, but I can't find the floppy drive. But otherwise, I got one.
Don't you have cartridges?
I have a few cartridges, but most of the games we played were on floppies. And I think I may have the floppies themselves, but we couldn't find the bit in the attic that had how do you actually get the program off the floppy and get to play it. So I may be missing parts.
Well, I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry.
A lot of stuff. I was going to say there's a ton of I remember years ago I was going to buy a ColecoVision, and it was people will buy them.
ColecoVision, wow.
And they completely restore them. They take them apart, clean them, replace the wires.
Wasn't that the one that had the stringy floppy? Wasn't that the storage? It was like a cassette.
No,
they called
it.
They have a cartridge.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We had a cassette too, and that I think I do have, but it was too slow. We didn't play the games off the cassette. We played the games off the floppy drive. But yeah, actually, the option key or the select key got sticky at some point, so it will need a little bit of TLC.
So Tuesday, Civilization 7 comes out, and I'm going to take the rest of the week off. No, I'm going to be gone Wednesday through Saturday because I'm taking Lisa to the Tucson International Gem and Mineral Show, a rock show. So it's not a rock concert, it's a rock show. So I will not be here for Wednesday's shows, but Micah will be filling in for me on Windows Weekly and Twig. And maybe I will play a little Civ 7 while I'm gone. I don't know. We'll see.
We gave it a very good review.
Did you? People are getting really excited about it. I've never been a Civ player because turn-based games I always liked real-time strategy. Like I was a huge Age of Empires fan, but Benito's convinced me I have to.
I do not like that I cannot play my Age of Empires, which I lawfully purchased and will not run on my machine. I think. Well,
you need an iPad because they just released it for iOS for iPads.
I have to buy it again to play the software I lawfully purchased from Microsoft.
I've bought Age of Empires many times.
You purchased the license to play that game, which they revoked.
Many, many times.
Oh, did they even revoke? Where's my notice of that revocation?
Always the lawyer, Kathy Gellis.
I want to play that game. I missed it, and I can't because it won't run on this computer.
Wasn't it a great game?
I
loved Age of Empires.
So it was remastered, so it's even better now.
AOE 2 is incredible, yeah.
I don't always like the newfangled animations that some of the remastered games are. I kind of like the stuff that's not fully pixelated, but like closer to that style. The ones that are like so detailed. I bought an Age of Empires 4 and because I wanted, if I like 3, I better like 4. And I returned it in the return window. I just found it so garish that I didn't want to play it anymore.
It gets me because I'm watching the trailer for Civ 7 and it's all cutscenes. This is not what the game looks like. Give me a break.
Yeah.
This is really
always lies.
It's kind of deceptive, really. You want to know what the game looks like? Let me see if this will show.
Click.
It's a top down. You're looking at the, Anyway, I still look forward to it.
Hello, Civ fans.
That's not it either. What the hell? There it is. This is a little closer to the real thing. Anyway, thank you, Kathy, for being here. Thank you for the work you do at Tech Dirt. Try not to bust a aneurysm or something. Just breathe deep and go look at the San Francisco Bay. It's gorgeous today. I really appreciate everything you do. cgcouncil.com. She's on Blue Sky. Kathy with a C. Gellis.
Yes. Well, that's why I write what I write. I think that a lot of people are really upset and don't really know how things work. And if I can explain how things work, I think that will help focus people, help them take a breath, and then organize their strength to use it in usable ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm frustrated. I don't know what to do. And I don't feel like there's much we can do. But I will keep reading you. Yeah. I will read Tector.
Keep calling your Congress people. Let them.
We live in California. Our Congress people are not, they're not the bad guys.
No, but they need to know. They need to know.
It's data that they can use and say, hey, call volume has surged
1,600 calls a day, right?
Or an hour, they keep a record of what matters to you as well. Yeah.
And they'll hold the line, and the senators in particular. And it's even
Adam
if they're
Schiff especially people, needs to hear from you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's my senator.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Kathy. Thank you, Lisa Schmeiser. NoJitter.com. You're the editor-in-chief. Tell me about No Jitter.
The quick elevator pitch is we cover the technologies that help move information from point A to point B and allow everybody to act on that information. So it's communication and collaboration technologies from personal workspaces all the way up to enterprise networking and contact centers.
That's pretty important stuff, it sounds like. It's great to have you on the show, and I appreciate it. And everybody should immediately to nojitter.com. You can sign up for the newsletters. And stay on top of communication in the workplace. Daniel Rubino, editor-in-chief of Windows Central, also a part of my regular daily news check every day, something good at windowscentral.com. Thank you for being here, Daniel. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Same.
Thanks to all of you for being here. You can go watch the Super Bowl now. I think we got it done just in time. Yeah. This is normally 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Excuse me, 2200 UTC to watch the show on those 8 live streams. But of course, it's a podcast, which means you can get a copy of it at our website, twit.tv, or YouTube, where you'll see the video. That's a great way to share clips from the show. And finally, of course, best thing to do is subscribe in your favorite podcast player. Just because you have it doesn't mean you have to listen to it. But it would be nice if you downloaded it, and it'd be even nicer if you listened to it. We appreciate it. Thanks again to all of our club members who make the show possible. Thanks to Benito Gonzalez, who is our technical director, producer. Great job, Benito. Kevin King will be editing the show later today. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We're celebrating our 20th year as a podcast. In fact, April will be the 20th anniversary of the first Twit. And as I've said for the last 20 years, hard to believe. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. Another Twit is in the can. Bye-bye.
This is amazing.